So we're there. I would like to call the Novi Board of Education regular meeting to order. Tonight is April 21st. We can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I can get a motion to approve the agenda this evening,
I'll move to approve tonight's agenda.
Support.
recommended by Mr. Smith and supported by Mr. Cook. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. We are going to start our evening with awards and recognitions and some presentations, and we will begin with our support person of the year, Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. We are very excited this evening to be able to recognize our support person of the year, and I will turn to Dr. Kinsey.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. The Novi Community School District Support Person of the Year program recognizes our support staff who have achieved the highest standards of excellence in our district. The support staff are nominated by their peers with recommendations by administration and many times parents and students. In March, one of our finest support staff members was recognized for her dedication to the students of the Novi Community School District. This evening, we present the administrator who will introduce the 2022 Novi Support Person of the Year to the board for recognition. And to announce our winner and to introduce her, I would like to introduce our Director of Transportation, Cindy Valentine.
Hello. So Karen has been my assistant for 10 years. She's been in our department for 12 years. Couldn't do it without her. She really is everything that you'd ever want in an assistant. She helps every day. The drivers love her. Everybody in the buildings respects her, looks up to her. And when I lost my daughter, she stepped right in and did everything. And so she is the best person. Nobody steal her from me. And yeah, she is great, and she has deserved this award for quite a long time. So I'm very, very honored and happy that she won and that I get to work with her every day.
We know you love public speaking, Ms. Dennis.
I would just like to thank the drivers for putting me forward for this. I'm just so overwhelmed, and I'm just so thankful for it. It's so nice, and I just wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Cindy, who's a great director, who's taught me a lot, and the drivers are a fantastic team, and we just all work together to get through every day the best we can. So I just really appreciate it, and thank you very much.
So we do have some drivers here this evening that came to support Karen and Cindy, and so if we could have the drivers stand up, we would recognize them as well. And if you're ever having a bad day, all you have to do is call the office and have Karen answer the phone, and I'm going to offend somebody. That brogue that she has is just delightful to listen to over the phone, and we appreciate it very much. And Karen, we deeply appreciate all that you do for the district and all that you do for our students and our staff. And I know the drivers love you, and I know Cindy really supports you as well. So thank you very much for being here this evening. Yes, Karen, you brought someone with you. You want to introduce who you may have brought? Yeah, sitting next to you.
Jim didn't think he was going to have to say anything. This is Jim Dennett, Karen's husband. He's doing everything she wants tonight, so good job.
Mr. Smith.
I just want to say, I've tried Cindy to recruit him, but my stepdad drives for Wall Lake. And I can't get him to come over here, but I just want,
I tried to get him here too. I know that very well.
oh, you know Ed Marr?
Right,
Yeah,
yes.
so-
I worked him all day with them.
Oh,
I tried.
he's great, right? And plus he
Yes.
wins the chili contest every year. Yeah, the Super Bowl pool. But, as a parent in the district, whose kids have 2 houses, I appreciate the work that you do. It's hard enough to get 3 kids on a bus schedule, much less at mom's house and dad's house, so I appreciate the work that you guys do. It's not unnoticed, and we're glad to have you from Kentucky.
If I may, Karen, I want to say, and I think Tom did a great job there as well, to all the drivers in the room, beyond the fact, like things that the community sometimes can't see, is just the interaction that our bus drivers have with our students on a daily basis that's so human, so beautiful, and how they work to teach the kids and help the kids. And I'll never forget, I had the same bus driver from kindergarten through 11th grade, bus number 4.
Wow.
Much love to Pat. She dealt with my knucklehead behavior as a youth. But Karen, really, the story here as well is the fact that, we were the only district in Oakland County to actually have school all last year for parents who wanted it. And the reason we were able to do that is because we could also provide transportation in a time that you had to reschedule, reroute, find people to cover routes, all of these things. And those are the pieces that sometimes people don't see. And what they might not also see about the drivers that you help lead and work beside with Cindy is each one of them read The Deepest Well by Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. And Cindy actually had conversations with your team about that. And that's a book that really explains childhood trauma. And the piece that our bus drivers, led by their team, engage in that type of thing to be better for our kids is something that can't be said too often. And so thank you very much for everything you've done. And I know Cindy, and a really difficult year for her, has had no issue even thinking about if things were going to be taken care of when she had to be out. And that is a gift that is an amazing gift for anybody going through a traumatic time. So thank you, Karen.
Real quick. I forgot Thomas was back there. Why don't you give a shout out to your favorite bus driver?
Mr. Davis.
Hey.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Any other comments from any board members? Okay.
No, but I'm going to call the transportation department tomorrow.
Congratulations, Karen. It's wonderful to have you here this evening and to have you be honored. You know, sometimes when you work behind the scenes, your work is just not as visual, and it's great to share these success stories and all you do for our district with our community. So thank you for being here, and thank you, Cindy. We will move on to our next opportunity for awards and recognition, and this is the Congressional Recognition.
Yeah,
Dr. Matthews.
this is a recognition from Kelly Green, who's our state rep here in Novi, and we're very excited to have her this evening. She'll have 2 pieces of information for the board. The first one is just a very exciting opportunity for Miss Carter.
I actually, if you don't mind, I have 2 items here.
Okay.
I would like Karen to come back up, if that's all right. And I have for Karen a certificate of recognition and a letter from me. And I want to thank you as a parent of 2 in the district. I can't imagine how hard it is. It must be like herding cats. And my kids were able to go to school all last year thanks to your and Cindy's hard work. And the difficulty that was presented to you, you guys came through, and it's true, I do like calling the transportation office. Brogue is the appropriate word. It's so pleasing, and so thank you so much for yours and for Cindy's hard work and all the bus drivers that take care of our kids every day. It means so, so much, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sorry, you guys are going to be hearing from me a lot tonight. And I appreciate the promotion on the agenda. It's not, I'm not the congressional representative for the area. I'll leave that to Haley Stevens. But I'm very honored to be the state representative. And I'm very, very honored to give this award, if you don't mind, Ms. Carter. to Principal Nicole Carter, who, I'm just gonna read some of this. Delighted to offer our recognition and congratulations to Nicole Carter on the occasion of being awarded the 2022 Principal of the Year. By the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals for exceptional work as a principal at Novi High School. Sparked by an experience as a volunteer working to promote literacy in Lansing Public Schools, Nicole Carter's passion for education has spanned decades. As a career employee at Novi High School, her 23 years of service in education, including 15 as an administrator, speak to the level of dedication she possesses. During her career, she has worked as a teacher, dean of students, assistant principal, and principal, displaying a broad range of talent and skill in the field of education. Nicole Carter has been a leader at Novi High School, both as a teacher and an administrator. She has encouraged and enabled her students and colleagues to reach their potential as leaders as well, and through her hard work and dedication, supported the health of her students and empowered them to grow and achieve academic success. And I think we've seen how amazingly successful academically our students have been here in Novi. We can all agree that is due in large part to the work done by Principal Carter. So, you've been recognized by your students who nominated you for Principal of the Year for your passion and work that you put into the school community. Thank you so much for being a leader, and I'm going to apologize in advance as my children will eventually. I'll give you my cell phone, and hopefully you don't need to use it too often. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a great day to be a,
Mrs. Roney said it's a great day to be a Novi Wildcat, Mrs. Carter.
It's another great day.
Another great day, yes. Congratulations again, Mrs. Carter, and thank you for being here tonight to provide that tribute to her. We are going to move on to the state representative update report, and again, that is Kelly Breen. We will be doing school safety task force update. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you. Our state representative, Kelly Breen, is part of a bipartisan school safety task force up in Lansing. And tonight she wanted an opportunity to come to the board to present an update to the board and to our community about some of the work that they've been doing up in Lansing. So Ms. Breen, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. So, two pieces of news. One, I didn't practice this before I got here, so I'm not sure how long I'll go, but I'll do my best to keep it short and sweet. But the good news is that a lot of work is still ongoing, and I fully intend on being back here in a few months once the budget is completed and we have some additional information on what we'll be able to accomplish. So, we have, and can you help me get this on the full screen? So in the wake of the horrible shooting at Oxford, a task force was formed with, at the direction of Speaker Wentworth. It has 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats. We've been meeting more than most committees. I'm going to give you a sampling on some of the things that we have been working on. As you can see, we have met with a very wide variety of organizations, with people. This is not even everybody that we have met with. I would like to especially recognize Safe Schools for Alex. That is an organization affiliated with Max Schechter, who lost his 14-year-old son in Parkland. He has been absolutely instrumental in walking us through a lot of the changes that Florida was able to make in the wake of that tragedy, and we hope to be able to implement some of those things here in Michigan. Now, there we go. We met as groups. We met individually. These are some of the other people that I have met with individually. I'd like to give a special shout out to Dr. R.J. Weber and Darby Hoppenstedt, who met with me for a couple hours one time to discuss what they've been doing here in Novi. And I also want to give a huge shout out to the students from Novi Career Prep. I met with them for about 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours, me in a room full of teenagers that were just telling me everything they wanted me to know. And one thing that they made very clear, they want a mental health professional in the building. And that's something that I think we can all strive for. We met, I met with Nicole Hockley, who is the mother of Dylan, who was murdered at Sandy Hook. the Sandy Hook Promise is a wonderful organization, and one thing that they do that's a little bit different is that they have certain programs that empower students to know what to look for as far as troubled peers, and they help empower students on recognizing the signs of struggle within their own selves as well as others. So, violence is not limited to gun violence, and it's certainly not limited to schools. Just to clear up a few things, a lot of people said, why not metal detectors? Well, what that does is it just pushes the violence off school grounds. It doesn't solve the problem. School hardening, which a lot of people talk about, bulletproof windows, corners in which kids can hide, that is what we have to do only if all other mitigation measures have failed. Because if there is somebody walking into your school with a gun, we have failed at many, many levels. So we met with OK to Say. That's a program that we hope to expand on, improve on. As you can see, this was a recent survey. 1 in 7 high school students carried a weapon to school within 30 days. 1 in 14 high school students threatened or harmed somebody with a weapon at least once in the preceding year. And in 2016, Michigan ranked worst in the country for bullying, including 3rd highest for the number of students bullied on school property. I asked Ms. Hoppenstadt for a few quick facts. What I can say is that so far in 22, there's been less than half a dozen instances of bullying reported. And I think that speaks a lot to the culture and programs that Novi have already created and implemented. So, gun violence. There's some hard facts. Michigan isn't too bad, I guess, on scale compared to other states. But one thing that we should really also recognize is that nearly 2/3 of all gun deaths are suicides. And non-fatal gun violence injuries, which is very costly to the public, not just from a monetary point, from a psychological standpoint, it's 35% higher than the national average. Some of the recommendations on the bottom do pertain to things that have come from other gun violence prevention groups, such as Gifford, Moms Demand Action, but as well as the Brady Institute. And these have been proven effective in other areas. Duke did a 200-page study. I don't recommend reading the whole thing unless you have insomnia, but the bottom line is that in states where they have extreme risk protection orders, which are designed to keep firearms out of the hands of people who are posing a significant threat to themselves or others, there has been a decrease in the number of suicides by firearm. These are just some of the things from the presentations that we have had over the last several months. If you're wondering, do some of these look familiar? That's because it's what we have seen as far as presentations from our own people here, including Darby and again, Dr. Weber. The multi-tiered systems of support, that shows what we are doing here in Novi for the majority of students as far as preventative measures, and this is also tied directly to social emotional learning, or as some people call it, social emotional intelligence. Again, this is something that we received from the School Safety and Crisis Preparedness curriculum. This came from a group of mental health experts as far as preparing for disasters. So, we created a portal on the legislature website where people can submit recommendations, things that they want to see, make suggestions. And one thing we did is we dived really hard into the school safety commission that put forth a report, and there were multiple recommendations. Some of these required legislative fixes, some of them require funding. One thing that I pledged to do from the get-go is not require anything unless it was funded. Also keeping in perspective that we have districts such as Sarah Cambensis in the UP, where one school district is at least a half hour away from first responders. And then we have places like Detroit. So while my heart is here in Novi and I have several other districts, this is going to be taken on a statewide scale. So we are looking at a very broad perspective of things that we can do. These are just some of the ideas that we had. We had pages and pages of ideas, such as a statewide capital needs survey, partnerships with colleges and universities to resolve pipeline problems. We all know that we have a teacher shortage and administrative shortage, a school counselor shortage, social workers, psychologists. We're short on all of them. So we have to be creative in what we can do in order to get more bodies in the buildings. There are several bills that are in the works right now. And some are part of what we're doing as a task force, some are being done individually, because this is a monumental effort on all fronts. So, and I'm gonna have to grab some water, sorry, but we are looking at 6 different policy buckets. We also put out a progress report, and that progress report is where we have cohesiveness. One thing that this progress report did not address, and you'll see this is one area, firearms and criminal justice. So, the focus has been on some of these other areas until we can reach some kind of a consensus. So these are some of the bills in progress. If you're wondering why one of them has a lot more details than the other, that's because that's my bill. And this is implementing a recommendation from the Michigan State Police. One thing that we are actively pursuing, should be in the budget, 2 different positions created for every ISD. One will be a mental health coordinator. The other one is my bill, which as you can see is a school safety specialist position. Somebody that will make sure that all the different districts within that ISD, public and private, we're not gonna leave the private schools out of this. Those kids deserve to be safe too. They will help coordinate and make sure that every single district, every single building, every single administrator is all up to par with the best recommendations that we can come up with. Other bills that are currently in progress, including, they include building code updates. We need to take care of Oxford. And I'd like to thank again this board and Dr. Weber for those initiatives to help benefit the students of Oxford. I don't believe they've reopened that wing. I'm not sure if they will. But they need to be taken care of. One thing that Oxford will hopefully be getting is they call Child and Adolescent Health Centers. These are already in 42% of our districts. What this is a school will donate the physical space, and a health organization will come into the district, and they will be able to provide physical and mental health services within that building. Right now, they are concentrated in areas where there is a high percentage of Medicaid recipients. We want to get them everywhere. The one that's here in Oakland is currently in Pontiac. I'm actually going to be touring that facility on Monday with the governor, seeing what we can do to get these in more places. So if you have kids that don't have access to transportation, or even as I learned when I went to the visit with those Novi kids, parents who can't or won't pay for necessary medication and treatment for diabetes or for asthma, students will be able to go to these facilities, get the treatment that they need then and there. There are also what's called E3 facilities. Those will be mental health facilities for those students. Obviously, that sounds wonderful. We'd love to be able to get them everywhere. Right now, it is kind of a pipe dream. They're in 42% of the counties. We want to get them to every county and then to every ISD. So, the budget, I'm going to just kind of skim over this because the Senate subcommittee discharged things out today and the numbers are in flux. But we're looking at some ongoing funding plus one, singular funding. What we had requested was probably the biggest investment in student mental health we're ever going to see. $200 million in grant funding for student mental health, a behavior health work system, mental health assessments. The bottom line on this one is $35 million for the school-based health centers, which we hope will get us maybe about 100 facilities. And that $8.7 million, that would be the funding for the 2 different positions that I discussed for every ISD. Some of the other things that we're recognizing here, we want to be able to create a different agency within MDHHS, as well as MDE, to help address mental health. We are looking at trying to expand OK to Say and additional school resource officers. And let's be clear, a school resource officer in Detroit is often viewed differently than one here in Novi. So we have to account for things like that. Also, I'd like to give a special shout out, she's not here today, but Officer Julie Warren, she has been absolutely wonderful. Officer Zabek, him too. So, these are some of the other one-time funding things. As you can see, there's a special Oxford bucket. So, what we've learned. We're ahead of the game. In violence prevention, student welfare, and creating culture of inclusiveness. And I want to be very clear on this. Social emotional learning, there is a lot of absolutely and completely false information out there. As you saw, all those organizations that we spoke with, all those experts, social emotional learning, or social emotional intelligence as some people call it, is absolutely critical in mitigating violence and helping our kids be the best little humans they can possibly be. If you look at violent offenders, they have a couple similar traits. They lack empathy, they can't manage emotions, and they have poor self-images. As an example, as you walk through the halls of Parkview, on the kids' lockers, you see my favorite part of me. And the kids talk about whether it's their hair, their feet, their brain. That is part of social and emotional learning. Above that, you see these thought bubbles that some of our ESL kids have said. And when you think about it, you're young, you speak a different language than everybody else. In Parkview, I think there's like 50 different languages spoken. Imagine how hard that is as a kid to talk. You have something important to say and nobody can understand you. And so what these ESL kids were saying were things like they feel alone, they feel scared. And by encouraging kids to talk about these things, the teachers then know how to direct their learning and how to help them develop a better self-image and to communicate. I mentioned before, the instances of bullying that have been reported so far this year are negligible. That goes hand in hand with what we saw at a meeting not long ago where Dr. Weber did a presentation on social emotional learning, and they talked about restorative justice, behavior early intervention, and all these folks that I've spoke to, they have pointed out how Novi has been doing it right. On a very personal note, as many of you know, as many of my friends in this room know, my son has had significant behavior problems in school. And some of the people that are in this room, and I'm looking there at the back row, because of what they've done, my son is going to be okay. I'm absolutely confident in this. Academically, obviously, we are way ahead of the game in so many other places. Novi is on the right course of action. So I am dismayed that we are going to be losing some of the people that have gotten us there. It's like the coaches that are leaving us when the teams are at the top of their game. The only thing that makes this somewhat palatable to me is that I'm a Northfield graduate. Northfield's very lucky. But using the systems that we have in place, I am very confident that Novi is they're on the right path, but we need to stay on this path. We don't want what has happened in so many other places. So, our final report, and I want to be clear, I don't think it should be a final report. The School Safety Task Force is something that I think needs to keep going because it embraces so many different areas that we need to make sure that we do this year after year and we make the best recommendations that we can. Again, we don't want to require anything that's not going to be funded. And I am very grateful to be in the Novi Community School District. I'm grateful for everybody here in this room, all you administrators, you bus drivers, everybody that's taking care of my kids and yours. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but it's pretty easy to find me. I couldn't hide if I tried. So does anybody have any questions for me right now?
A lot of information.
Oh, this is only a fraction of what I have gleaned.
Really glad to hear that that you're making progress with bipartisan support. That is really awesome, and it's what our kids need, so thanks.
The two co-chairs of this, it is a bipartisan committee, but we do have a Republican-controlled legislature. But the two co-chairs, Luke Meerman and Scott Van Singel, have been absolutely wonderful to work with. On a day where my son, he was going through a medication change, so he spent the day with me in Lansing. And he met Representative Meerman on the floor, and when we got home, he told my husband about Luke Meerman, who has 120 horses, not 120 horses, one horse, 120 cows, 4 cats, 2 dogs, and 5 kids. So we all bring something unique to the table with the task force. Some of us have kids in school, some of us don't. And we've been able to work very well together with, as you might expect, the one glaring example of not being able to come to a consensus on firearm legislation. But I'm confident we're going to get there at some point, because I'm not going to give up until we do.
Good news, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Hood?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Kelly, and I'd like to thank her as a trustee of a public school district, a significant public school district, for your support, for showing up, it varies, but sometimes people say 50%, 70%, 70% of life is showing up. And you show up and you ask us what we need, and you ask again, and then you come back and ask another time. And that is really, really cool. And I want to congratulate you because 2 years ago, you could not have talked through this presentation. You have leaned in and done your work. And that is, I'm grateful for that as a trustee who gets to sit up at this table. So, thank you.
I appreciate that, and I think it's also important to note that it shouldn't be people like me coming to you and saying, this is what you need and this is what you do. That's not how this works. It should be, what are the best practices? What are you guys doing? What do you need? And then coming to a consensus from there, to see what we can do to keep everybody moving forward.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kelly? No? Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for that presentation. More importantly, thank you for all the hard work that you're doing each and every day. This was a great overview. I know there's a lot more depth to it, but we do appreciate you taking the time and sharing this information on the work that's being done in this regard, both with us and obviously with the community as it's being televised. So thank you, and we'll be in touch.
Well, thank you, and again, I hope to come back when we have some final budget numbers, and maybe Karen could present with her very pleasing. might be easier to hear it from me. So, again, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Miss Holly, could you switch the, oh, it looks like they may have done it downstairs. There we go.
Alrighty. So we are moving into our opportunity for comments from the audience. If you can please pass your green cards over to Mrs. Holly or Mr. Smith, and he will pass them down the table to Mr. Cook so that we can have all those green cards up here and know the time frame that we need for speakers. He's like, give me your card.
Good to hear your name again.
No, there's more coming.
Do we have any more green cards?
I'd be really good at
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Can you pass them up? We're just trying to determine the time frame that we need to. Okay, so just one or two. Okay. Alrighty. Mr. Cook, I'm going to read the information for comments from the audience. Individuals who wish to address the board must identify themselves, their address, and any organization they may represent. The board and individual board members will not directly respond to comments or questions that arise during the public participation portion of the meeting. Individuals who wish to address the board shall direct their comments to this entire board and not to individual board members, the superintendent, other school district employees, or members of the audience. Behavior that is intemperate, abusive, defamatory, or discourteous, or that otherwise interferes with the orderly conduct and timely completion of the board's work at this board meeting is strictly prohibited. Mr. Cook?
Mrs. Crossy.
My name's Colleen Crossy. I just want to say a few words about, I'm 22279 Novi. Say a few words about one of the projects that was inspired by Dr. RJ and that was the Mental Health Network. This was inspired a few years ago, and at the time, it was really neat because you could see this kind of like a cloud formation. At one point, he knew what he kind of wanted it to be, but he didn't quite know, and he says, I don't know what this is gonna be, but it's gonna be great. And right now, what we have, thanks to, do you wanna raise your hand or, no, not really, okay. What we have is we are hosting an author who has written this book among others, and it's about, I'm gonna hold it to the camera, there you go. It's about girls and the pressures that they have, that they're under anxiety and things like that. And we're involving the entire community in this. And I wanted to kind of give a little advertisement for this event, not only because it involves the community, but if you'd like to be involved, you can get a free book. And it's kind of like a demonstration of how RJ has worked. And hopefully, if he goes, then, hopefully the person that replaces him will have similar kind of ways of doing that. And I did happen to see how the person who will be, they used to call them headhunters, but how the person who will find the new administration will operate. So I wanted to give a little something that says, this is our community, this is what we have benefited from. Just wanted to put a little 2 cents in there. Thank you.
Thank you, and I don't usually respond, but when is the date of that? I'm sorry.
The big thing will be May 3rd,
Okay.
and then,
I'm coming up, I'll do it.
Oh, okay. Okay, just as long as we get the information out there that, because you shared that with the community, I want to make sure that they have the full information, so thank you.
wonderful, yeah, because I don't always come fully prepared, so.
All right.
Mr. Peck?
Good evening. My name's Dan Peck. I have 3 daughters in Novi Woods. I've heard the board repeatedly state that finding a new superintendent is their most important job. This is the first search that I witnessed, and it's not clear to me how much effort that's supposed to entail. Thankfully, Northville, our most comparable district, just completed a similar search. Reviewing minutes from their board meetings, they met to decide on what the process should be. They elected to hire a search firm. They issued an RFP to search firms. They shortlisted search firms. They had multiple search firms present to the community. Then they met again to decide on a winner. All in fewer school days than have occurred since Dr. Matthews announced his intent to leave. The outcome, they won our own Dr. Weber, a gentleman that the community, parents, teachers, and administrators has spent hours imploring you to consider 3 minutes at a time. You flatly refused. Instead, we have had one subcommittee meeting where we talked about one option and got a proposal from one search firm, which is expected to be selected tonight. It seems like these meetings serve to ratify decisions that have already been made instead of encourage discussion on the decision-making process. You're losing the trust of the community at precisely the moment it's most important. Superintendent selection is your most important job. I urge you to think about what discussion is worth having, because your silence speaks much louder than differences of opinion ever will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. March?
Just do
evening, everybody. I'll start off with a little funny note. I actually thought the meeting started at 7:30, and so as I was pulling out of my garage, my son came running out to me. He's like, "I want to go with you," because they came with me the last time I was at one of these meetings. And I'm like, "Don't you remember how much fun it was?" So I was a little later even than I expected I would be. Anyhow, I reviewed the notes from the last board meeting and found that one of the comments that Dr. Matthews had made, and then said that he had stated, given his long history with Dr. Weber, he would like to see Dr. Weber stay in Novi. He mentioned that he understands that this is a board decision, and he is confident that our board will listen to our community because the board has a long history of listening and being transparent. So my hypothetical question is, when did that change? During the last meeting I attended about a week ago, again, with my kid who was having a tantrum this evening, a motion was made to discuss offering Dr. Weber the position of Novi superintendent. This motion was struck down by a vote of 4-3. Reasoning was that members were not prepared to discuss offering, to discuss this matter. And I'd hate to think that the board, whose primary reason is to select a superintendent, I wasn't aware that Dr. Matthews, let me back up. I'd hate to think that the board, whose primary reason for existing is to select a superintendent, wasn't aware that Dr. Matthews had all but provided his resignation to take the position at Rockford this summer. The only alternative is that they weren't prepared to speak publicly about their plans to keep Dr. Weber out of the running for Novi superintendent. I'm pretty sure everyone in this room knows the community reach out has been in clear support of the board offering Dr. Weber the position of superintendent, contingent on Dr. Matthews' resignation, of course. There must be some serious justifiable reasons for board members to vote down a discussion on offering the job to Dr. Weber. I would hate to think that it's just neighborhood chums pulling favors from one or more of our board members. I'm sure I don't need to remind you that as elected officials of a public board, you're supposed to represent the community at large, not just the folks on your block, especially when this impacts more than just them. So just to wrap this up, I'm also curious to know, because I didn't see it on the agenda, the status of the investigation referenced in the last Board of Education meeting. I thought that might be resolved by now, so I'm just curious to know when we might have some information on that. And I think you know how I feel about everything else thus far. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Johnny Marley ready?
Hello. Hey. This is really weird. I've never been in a room full of adults. It's usually the other way around. Usually it's 30 students and one teacher, but this is, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, first off, congrats to Mrs. Carter for being a great principal. She's been a huge support to all of our Novi High School students, so thank you for that. And for the bus drivers, thank you. You guys have been there for 13 years. I've been a part of Novi for 13 years, so thank you. I just want to take this time to quickly speak about the Student Mental Health Committee. I'm a high school senior at Novi, and basically next week is You Matter Week. And as the leader of the Student Mental Health Committee at Novi, we all know how important it is at Novi to maintain great mental health and all of that, especially with the academic environment as well as just the new things that are happening and all of that. So in order to do that, we're planning a lot of activities next week, and part of that is this Crush the Stigma event. So I don't know if you guys have heard, we've been advertising a lot. Hopefully it's been reaching you. But next Friday, we're having this, so there's this company, let's just start off with that. And basically they're a car recycling company, and they come in and basically drop off cars. So they're coming in this Saturday, if I'm sure. And the cars are gonna be there from Saturday till Friday. And basically the cars are just plain white cars. And anyone from the community, it's mostly open to like high school students because it's accessible to them, but literally anyone can come in and write on the cars about just like negative things maybe that you have in your life. So maybe parent stress, AP tests, just like anything really, pressures, depression, anxiety, whatever you've been feeling recently. And on Friday during school, so we're gonna, I think we're getting 3 cars because of Novi. 4? Okay, we're getting 4. 1 for the staff. You can't forget about the staff. But then they're going to be crushing the cars. like literally crushing the cars in front of us. So that's gonna be a really cool experience because you're crushing the stigma. Get it? Okay. So there's that. And so anyway, I wanted to speak about a community event we're actually having next Tuesday. So on Tuesday, we're having a couple of speakers come over. We're having Mrs. Debbie Wertz, if possible. Then we have Theresa Cry, who's actually a college admissions counselor, to speak about just like the college experience of like stress and anxiety, like, you know, just all of that, maintaining your cool. And then we're hoping to actually have the CEO of GLR Advanced, but it looks like he might not be able to come. So maybe a video and then someone else from Easter Seals if possible. But it's open to everyone. Adults are more than welcome, actually. We would like if all of you could come and bring your kids or anyone. It's a community event. There'll be free cookies. And that's a reason for you to come from 7 to 8 next Tuesday at the Novi High School. Lecture Area A. We might move to the auditorium if we have it big. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Rod Schlesselman?
Good evening, my name is Raj Schlossman. My address is 100 Pleasant Cove Drive. I've had 2 children who went through Novi education system some time ago. They're graduates. Anyway, I will be kind of short because Mrs. Much mentioned most of what I wanted to talk about, which is fortunate for me. But what I've been thinking about is I like to do jigsaw puzzles. And when I do a jigsaw puzzle, it's you take all the pieces and you fit together what looks like, what makes sense, what's logical. And when you're done, you see the full picture. But what's been going on with the replacement or for the superintendent, I've got some pieces missing. So I don't understand what is going on with the board. And as Mrs. Much said, it was moved that there was a discussion, or for a discussion, to engage Dr. Weber for superintendent. And it was rejected, and the most glaring reason was, I'm not prepared. The dog ate my notes, apparently. But what's more curious is, that was the motion to add an agenda item. I don't see anything on this week's agenda to do that. And I'm curious as to why it wasn't added. Last week it wasn't, I was not prepared. This week you would be prepared, and it makes perfect sense to me that it would be on the agenda, so I looked for that, the first thing. Further, I went back into the superintendent report, and this was probably from about a month ago, I'm not quite sure, where Dr. Matthews stated that he's worked with Dr. Weber, for 11 years. He's exceptionally talented and ready to be a superintendent. We're tossing that away willy-nilly, just saying, okay, well, we don't have our notes. We're not ready. And I think that's just not being, really not doing your jobs, not really saying, hey, this is a serious thing we need to do. We really should consider this. And besides, having a discussion hurts no, and there's no risk. Dr. Weber already has another offer. You could say whatever you want. He could go. That's okay, if that's how you feel. But I would like to know what those discussion points were. And I think those things are being hidden. I don't really, those are those missing pieces I can't seem to find. And I'm really disheartened, but well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and good luck.
Thank you.
Mrs. Tropey?
Hi, Sharon Trumpy, Novi resident. Good evening, trustees. I come to you today with an important data set and reflection to share with our community. I will be sharing a lot of information with you tonight. Before you all start whispering to your neighbors, Where did she get this information? We submitted a FOIA request to NCSD and received copies of every single email that was sent to the board regarding the superintendent search process. Although this board has likely known since at least February that we are at risk of losing our top 2 highly coveted and accomplished leaders to other districts, this board has yet to have any public discussion about the feedback that you have in fact received from your community. Since you weren't doing the work, we did. After receiving the FOIA letters, a few of us took a deeper dive. Here is what we learned. After eliminating emails that came, repeated emails from certain members, there were 139 unique senders of messages in about 12 days. 123 of those senders were in support of R.J. Weber, and 16 raised concerns or urged a full search process. But what we found far more interesting is what became clear about who these senders were. As we all know, Dr. Ruskin has, from the very start, independently committed to a full search. It was fascinating to see who the 16 senders were who encouraged this path. 100% of these 16 senders are white, no assumption of their ethnic backgrounds, while 60% of our district is non-white. 90% of these 16 live in the 48374 zip code, Northwest Novi, almost exclusively in the Island Lake neighborhood, and within a half mile of Trustee Ruskin. 11 of the 16 are from the Deerfield Elementary catchment area. This is a striking concentration of voices in our district that seem to have an incredibly outsized influence on the process and decision-making of this board. Let me also tell you what we learned about the 123 senders whose strong pleading and recommendation to retain Dr. Weber were at best inconsistently responded to by this board and certainly not considered or valued. The 123 that were in support came from every zip code, 48374, 48375, 48377, and every elementary catchment area. We make no assumptions about their ethnicities, and of course white parents were also in this group. But it was clear that Indian, Japanese, Chinese, Black, Hispanic, and many other groups were well represented. This group was far more representative of the families in our district. This group also included educators, administrators, active PTO leaders, elected officials, and of course, parents like me. For anyone who is interested, there is a map about this FOIA analysis, which I think was passed out and will also be on the back table. We will also email this to our administrators, the full board, and any elected official in our community. We do have a problem in our community that deserves your leadership. It is not about losing our 2 superintendents. It is about a community where not all voices have power. I'm not interested in standing with the board. I'm demanding that the board stand with its community, its whole community. Please do what's right and begin to give all our voices respect and influence they deserve.
Sarah Lippard.
Hi, my name is Sarah Leppard. I live at 21901 Green Tree Lane. I'm a Novi resident. I'm a mom. I have a senior, a freshman, and a 5th grader. And I'm also a high school counselor. So I work at the high school. And I'm here really to just tell the community about the event. Colleen and I were on the same wavelength. I helped to organize the Novi Mental Health Alliance. So I do really appreciate all the work that Dr. Weber has put in and teamed up with me, and Dr. Matthews as well. They both have really supported this this group over the last 4 years. And when I need something and need some help, they're great at seeing how they can help and help to just share the information about it. But we have a big event coming. The Novi Community Coalition, many of you know Debbie Wirtz, who is just a dear friend of mine and I just care so much about. She is such an awesome woman who cares about our community. She works great with our Student Mental Health Committee as well. She works for the Novi Community Coalition, and they've sponsored this event, so that means they paid for this event for us. We have the book club that's running. It runs, then the second group is Monday, April 25th, so this coming Monday. I know that it says it's closed at the library if you try to register, but you are welcome to attend, and if there are extra books, I think because the first meeting was the 11th, they closed it after it started. So if you're interested, show up. There will be people to lead it. I will be at DECA Nationals, so I won't be there, but there will be some great people to help lead that book discussion on Monday the 25th. And then on Tuesday, May 2nd, so May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and Dr. Lisa DeMoore, who is a New York Times bestselling author who wrote the book that Colleen brought in, and she also wrote Untangled. She speaks on stress and anxiety, and her first 2 books really do focus on girls, but they're the talk on the second is really focusing on how to talk to kids about managing stress and anxiety. And she said that is for all ages, because we all deal with stress and anxiety, and all genders. So it's not, it will not be specific to girls. Another thing that it is a live Zoom. So she is in Cleveland, I think. So we will do a live Zoom. If you want to come watch with me at the Novi Middle School, we'll have it projected and watching together as a community. But if you are not able to attend in person, we will send out a Zoom link so you can watch from home. And she'll do about a 35-40-minute presentation, and then there will be time for public questions. So at the middle school, we'll have a microphone. You can ask questions there, or you can unmute or chat through the Zoom at home. So I hope that we get as many people as we can there. It's a great opportunity to hear from a woman that has some great insight into stress and anxiety. And one more plug for her, she has this great podcast that is called Ask Lisa, and she talks about just all sorts of questions with parenting and the struggles there are with parenting. So I encourage you all to listen to that as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Betsy Bodine.
Bodwine, Betsy Bodwine. So, my dear friend Sharon started having this conversation with you all, and I would first like to also thank Nita Thurman, who, while I was sitting here saying how I felt about our voices being silenced, she said, in the very brilliant way only Panita can say, let's get the data. And I am very thankful that she did, because I kind of had the feeling that there was outsized influence, and that as a person who has stood here over and over and over asking for your action, and just kind of being ignored or made fun of, or kind of having my name mispronounced, general disrespect, that kind of a vibe, it was really interesting to see the people that doesn't happen to. And as you notice those little microaggressions and the little tiny things where we all go, oh, well, I'm sure it wasn't that, it adds up to a lot when you put it on a map. And it breaks my heart. This is my community. Some of you have heard me speak about this before. My oldest, who's now in 7th grade, started kindergarten in the exact same classroom that I did at Village Oaks. Walking her in that first day, because we were allowed to do that then, there wasn't a pandemic, I had a flood of memories of Mrs. Little and the letter people and all of the wonderful things this district did for me. And my hope for my children was abundant. I did not anticipate this map. I did not anticipate this board. I think it's clear that there is a problem here. And when I think about my experiences the last 2 years, when I first came here to speak to you all, I thought that I would show up, I would tell you about the racism, you would thank me, and you would fix it. Because I thought that is what a good school board would do, and I thought Novi would have a good school board. That has not been my experience. Additionally, the Missioners, as some of you may know, are dealing with some quarantine stuff at the moment, so thoughts and prayers for them. I would like to point out that when Tara was here and spoke about another member in the audience, she was gavelled. I've seen that happen a number of times this evening. The gavel has remained firmly in place. I ask you all to examine your biases. I ask you to examine the data, and I ask you to do better starting right now. This community deserves much better than we have gotten, because all of those purple dots represent our children, and you owe them a proper education the same way that you give the same consideration to your friends. Thank you.
Panita Danny Thurman.
Panita Thurman, proud Village Oaks parent. Sharon presented to you the results of that data analysis received by the board. We've had a lot of conversations about this idea of the moment of crisis that we're in with 2 leaders leaving. Let me be clear, this is not a moment of crisis. This is a crisis of your making. The patterns that we are in, to have 2 of our administrators leave at once, is a direct result of this continued and visible lack of leadership of this board. You have allowed, and you continue to allow, a few voices to show up, dominate, cause havoc, and wreak pain for our educators and our leaders. Dr. Matthews is leaving. He told us in March of 2021 that he would leave. He told us the kind of place that he wanted to choose to lead in. While there was a lot of attack about curriculum and whose rights were there, this is exactly what Dr. Matthews told us. I believe that every voice should be able to sing in our choir. We should look for and encourage a wide range of materials that will make some people uncomfortable at times, but it must be done. If our community says it cannot be done, then I am not the right person to lead this district, and he's leaving. Dr. Weber has repeatedly been held up to scrutiny, ridicule, attack by numerous members of our community, and this board has tolerated that behavior. They have tolerated creating a culture of retaliation, of silence, and so Dr. Weber's is leaving, and Northville's gleeful to take him. They've watched his results, they have watched his results, they have watched his passion, and their district will thrive under his leadership. This is not a crisis of a moment. This is a crisis of your making. In July of 2020, 600 students, parents, community members put their names on a petition asking this board to take action about things like parts of our high school called Africa, racial slurs that were regularly used. Not once did this board discuss it in public comment. Social emotional learning. A few members of that list of 16 have repeatedly attacked this board and our administrators about social emotional learning. One member of that board has attacked the Novi Educational Foundation about grants that they're making in response to what teachers have asked for. This board changed your policy about gifts and acceptance. A few members that are on that list questioned the Sex Ed Advisory Board, and all of a sudden, within a span of weeks, were given space on that Sex Advisory Board. I am a proud Village Oaks parent. My voice matters. It should matter to this district. You do have a crisis of confidence. Not maybe, not possibly, and not in the past. Now, you need to do better.
Sajida Raman.
Sujata Raman. Thank you. I'm going to speak about 2 quick things. A lot of people have already said much of what I was going to say. One thing I want to mention is, and I think Rod spoke to this, while the board stays silent, the community is talking. You have a duty to tell us what's going on with this investigation. We know that whatever's going on involves a board member, and it's completely inappropriate that this member continues to sit on this board while the community has not been informed of what's going on. So I ask you to change that and let us know tonight. Give us a clue of what's going on. We deserve to know that. The stats that have been read regarding the comments and the input that you have received from this community regarding the superintendent position are astonishing to me. I had some general idea. I didn't know the depth of it, and it's stunning to me. The SEAB, I know that I have not had a chance to address this, but to Punita's point, it was 3 families, 3 people, 3, that demanded a seat on that board, and they were granted those seats. I know that there's, on social media, there's some intimation that it was, oh, no, they were invited. No, I've heard different accounts. I know that it wasn't just an invitation that was extended. And if it was, I reached out once I found out what was going on, you all know, because I copied you all on the email. So you know very well that I also asked to be seated on this board, because if it was being opened up, then I thought it only fair that it be opened up for everybody. I didn't receive a response for weeks, and when I did, I was told that the whole committee was being put on pause. What of those 17 volunteers that have been working throughout this year on the mission of that board to be all of their work to be for nothing because of 3 people? And those same three people are part of, I would be willing to bet, I don't know for sure, but I'd be willing to bet that they're part of the group of 16 that are opposed to just naming Dr. Weber as our next superintendent and in favor of a search. And guess what? 140, I don't know the exact number, but something like 140 people have emailed and begged this board, stood at this podium. I have been here for so many meetings now. I have asked you over and over. I have begged for this. And I've done it at the expense of time with my kids. And you've ignored us. 140 people. That's unacceptable. Know that you are elected officials. You represent all of us. And if you can't represent all of us, you shouldn't be on the board. Doing this kind of thing has consequences. I just want you to know that.
Jennifer Kalusik.
Good evening. I don't want to be making this speech tonight because I want to be talking about how there should be an action item on the agenda to discuss offering Dr. R.J. Weber the superintendent position. As one of the community members said, your ridiculous lack of preparedness to discuss this a week ago should have been rectified, or 2 weeks ago should have been rectified to have it on the agenda tonight. But now that you have once again completely ignored the community, the overwhelming majority of the community as demonstrated by the map, we will be holding you accountable to do a full and thorough search to find a candidate who is at least as qualified as Dr. Weber. With all due respect to the search firm here tonight, you have a heavy lift in front of you, and we have high expectations that you need to yield exceptional results. Not just candidates who are, quote, not bad, or candidates who are, quote, healthy enough, but candidates who are at least as qualified for this position as Dr. Weber. This search needs to include at least the steps taken by Northville, since we already know they got the top candidate from us. That includes 3 days of pre-interview community forums, not just one, 10 reference calls, including to names not provided by the candidate, 2 formal interviews, 4 one-hour community forums with the candidates facilitated by the search firm with 50 community members in each, all filling out a real-time evaluation of the candidate's performance in the interview. And to highlight the points that other community members have made tonight, those 50 people should not just come from one neighborhood or one zip code. It should be representative of the entire community. Submission of 5 pieces of writing from within the past year, an on-demand writing examination of writing prompts with an hour to compose a sample communication to the community, including on a crisis communication. Then, in order to address and heal the issues that have plagued this community, we want to know the following of what the search firm is going to address. 1/3 of our families identify as English not being their primary language. How will you ensure the search firm takes that into account? How will you ensure that the search firm takes into account what the overwhelming majority of this community wants in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives? The candidate should be asked, what demonstrable data do you have to show how many minority candidates you have participated in hiring in your current position or in the past? What have you personally done to recruit minority candidates to your school district? What minority colleges have you recruited from, minority teacher associations, minority career fairs? What DEI plans do you have in place? What have you personally done to further DEI initiatives in your school district? I implore you once again to listen to the overwhelming majority and the consistent voice of this community, and to put aside any personal issues or petty politics. And I encourage you to vote against hiring this search firm and offering R.J. Weber a superintendent position
The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. We have 3 consent items: approval of minutes, regular meeting minutes, April 7th, regular meeting minutes, April 14th, closed session meeting minutes of April 14th. If I can get a recommendation? Mrs. Roney?
I'll recommend that the Novi Community School Board of Ed approve the consent items as
presented.
Support.
Recommended by Mrs. Roney and supported by Mr. Mena. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. We have quite a few action items for this evening. The first one being superintendent search discussion. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. With the resignation, my resignation, the district is in need of conducting a search for the next superintendent. And I was asked to reach out to search firms that I might know to have them come and talk with the board. And so I reached out to the Michigan Leadership Institute. We have Dr. John Silveri, who works for the Michigan Leadership Institute with us here this evening. He also was a former superintendent in Waterford, has a lot of experience in Oakland County as well as being with the Michigan Leadership Institute. And so tonight, Dr. Silveri, we would ask you to go to the podium and give a brief overview of what you talked with the Superintendent Search Subcommittee last Monday evening about, and then the recommendation that comes to the board this evening would be that you would hire the Michigan Leadership Institute. This is done because I was given the direction that the board has a desire to kind of move this forward as quickly as possible, because both Dr. Weber and I will be leaving the district in the 1st of July, and so the goal would be to try to identify the next superintendent by then. And so instead of vetting a variety of firms, I was asked to bring forth a firm that I thought could do the job. And so I brought forth the Michigan Leadership Institute, or MLI, to the board. Ultimately, it's up to the board to make the decision, but Dr. Silveri will give a brief overview of what the process might look like. Dr. Silveri, we would ask you to go to the podium.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation to be here and to share a brief overview with you. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into in terms of the process. I know that I have shared a full proposal with you, and when I met with the subcommittee the other evening, we reviewed a timeline. Know that the timeline was an absolute first stab at what was kind of the most expeditious way that I could see us moving through a process and getting to the finish line as quickly as possible while still conducting a search with fidelity. So I believe it accomplishes that. Although it's going to be a work in progress, because until we have an opportunity, all of us, to meet together and discuss it, it's very likely to have to change. A couple of things have come up already. For example, on what you received, it included one date where it would be a full day and into the evening of meeting with various stakeholder groups to obtain feedback on creating the candidate profile that would be a snapshot of what you're looking for in your next superintendent. That would be done in addition to an electronic survey for those folks who weren't present. So the combination of those things would result in you having the chance to reach out to everybody in the community, having everyone have the chance to give their input. Although I know the board members at that time expressed that they would likely want to increase that to a couple of days and provide multiple face-to-face opportunities. I know too, for example, that the very first date where the board would come back together to review applications that were submitted, lo and behold, is your graduation night, so we know that won't work. So we would need to make adjustments, and that could very well extend the time a little bit and have that finish line pushed a little bit farther out. But I will say this, if need be, then that's what we do. The most important thing is that we do this correctly, the things that we take pride in when we talk about our process is that we're thorough, that we're transparent, and that we're inclusive. Those are the promises that we make to you if you hire our firm to do this work. I can talk a lot about what we will do. Again, I'm a little bit reluctant to be too redundant because I think you've heard some of it already and you see it in front of you. Maybe what's more important is what we have done. So I think you know too. We have, as a firm, over the course of the last 20 plus years, done over 450 searches successfully. We've done this in every kind of district imaginable: rural, urban, suburban, very small districts, very large districts. wealthy districts to economically challenged districts, you name it. So we have experience, very diverse districts, districts that aren't very diverse at all. We have experience in all of them. Personally, my experience has come over the course of the last, now going on almost 7 years since I retired from the Waterford School District. The searches that I've conducted have been throughout Southeast Michigan, but there have been a lot of those that have been in the local area in Oakland County as well. Most recently, I've assisted the West Bloomfield School District and Oxford Schools, Berkeley, South Lyon, Lake Orion, Birmingham, and others. But I certainly have helped other districts throughout the area. Districts like, most recently again, Adrian, Anchor Bay, Wayne Westland, Taylor School District, a variety. The thing that I would point you to as far as that goes is the things that I told you we strive to accomplish, that we're thorough, that we're transparent, that we're inclusive. I would invite you to contact any of those districts, or in the proposal that you got, you see a list of all of the districts that we've supported as the organization within the course of, I think, the last 4 years. And I highlighted for you all of those that I supported personally. I would invite you to reach out and contact any and all of those districts, because I think the key here is that, and again, what have we done, not just what we say we're going to do. We've been successful. We have. They've been pleased not only with the process and felt like it was thorough, it was transparent, it was inclusive, and it allowed them to conduct the process with fidelity. But they were very pleased in every case with the results. The longevity of the candidates that we've placed speaks for itself as well. As I told the subcommittee the other day, I had a perfect record going until just about 6 months ago. A couple of people decided to move on and spoiled that for me. But since 2015, in all the searches that I've conducted, those were the first two folks that had moved on. So the longevity of the candidates that have been placed has been very strong as well, which I think speaks for itself. And the satisfaction of those districts with those candidates also speaks for itself. The feedback that the districts have gotten from their stakeholders in the districts where we've supported their efforts has been extremely positive, because they have been involved, they have been engaged, they have seen exactly what's happening, and they have felt very confident not only in the outcome of the process, but in the process itself, which is really incredibly important. So as you consider firms, there are other firms who can do this work, unquestionably. There are other firms in Michigan who could do the work. There are other firms with a more national scope who can do the work. I would stack what we do and the results that we obtain up against any of those folks, and I think our reputation speaks for itself for good reason. So in terms of the search itself, initially, if you were to select us, just to start out, know that we would immediately post this position, meaning literally, if you were to select us tonight, the position would be posted tomorrow, without details. And we'll get to that in a second, but it would be posted without the details. Just so you have an idea of where that's posted, it's on the Michigan Leadership Institute website. It's on the MASA website, that's the State Superintendent Organization. When it goes to the state organization, it also goes out to other organizations such as MAISA, which is the Intermediate School District Association, the Michigan ASCD, that's Curriculum Association, MASSP, that's Secondary School Principals, MASB, that's the School Board Association, MEMSPA, that's Elementary and Middle School Principals Association, and MSPRA, that's the State Public Relations Association. So tomorrow, notice that the position is vacant, would be out in all of those organizations, as well as a link to the application itself where people could immediately access that link and immediately start the application process if they so chose. Honestly, it's not going to take that notification for people to know that there's a vacancy here. Right? It's not going to be a surprise to anyone. That word is out already. I've already heard from a couple of people, for example, who contacted me not having any idea that I had even had a conversation with you folks. just kind of picking my brain and wondering about the vacancy and asking questions and just expressing interest already. So there's already interest. That posting will be out tomorrow and allow people to begin that application process if they wish to. If you choose to, as I had mentioned to the subcommittee, there's a standard flat fee that we would charge for the service for an additional $1,000 that just covers the posting fees. It's not there for profit. But we would also post nationally with such organizations as AASA, that's the National Superintendent Association, the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, and the National Alliance of Black School Educators. So know that that also would get that national exposure as well. So once that was out, we would go through the process of collecting feedback from your stakeholders. And again, we would do that via face-to-face meetings, as well as that electronic option, so that anybody and everybody could take part in that. We ask some basic questions, the most critical being, what are the skills, abilities, and characteristics that you believe the next superintendent of Novi Community School District needs to possess in order to be highly effective? The second question is, of all of the outstanding things about Novi schools, in your estimation, what are the things, the top 5 things that stand out above all else? And what are the top 3 challenges you believe the next superintendent will face? The first 2 will provide data that will help inform the position announcement, the formal position announcement that we'll create. The last one is just really additional information for your benefit, and you'll have that at your disposal, not only for your learning, but when you do make the decision to hire your next superintendent, that's very valuable information for you to be able to share with your next leader. So all those things, that candidate profile is the most important of all of the many responses we'll get from you folks, from the people we meet with face-to-face, from the online survey. We'll be pulling common threads from that and using those to create that profile, the things that when you talk to a variety of stakeholders, students, staff members, parents, community members, etc., here are the things that were shared repeatedly. Here are the things that clearly are most valued and held out as being most important. So that candidate profile then will not only become part of that formal position announcement, I would continue to keep that in front of you throughout the process. Every time when we first meet to review applicants, when you come in for interviews, I'm going to continue to put that back in front of you as a reminder that we're not just looking for great candidates, we're looking for candidates that are going to be a great fit here. So that process roughly takes a couple of weeks to obtain that data, put that draft profile together, share it with you to get your feedback, finalize it, and then get that out. So bear in mind that the posting will have been out publicly with that link for a couple of weeks already. Once we formally put that position announcement out, we can do that. The shortest amount of time that we feel comfortable with is 4 weeks. Admittedly, typically we'll do 5, but the fact that we're putting this out right away would have a grand total of 6 weeks that would be out, which I would be comfortable with and feel like that would be absolutely sufficient to be able to have the word out, make sure that anybody who was interested was able to see it, complete the application form, and submit that. One thing I would promise you, and that you should know about me if you were to enlist our services, and I would be the consultant you'd be working with, almost exclusively, even though behind the scenes I would be working with our colleagues that are blanketed throughout the state. I would be the person working directly with you. With the possible exception, I may need some support when we have those stakeholder meetings, just because I have other commitments that I need to fulfill. Otherwise, I'll be here with you. But what you'll get with me is I will be very honest and very direct with you. That's just my nature. I don't think I'm doing you any favors by doing anything other. And so I say that to illustrate the point, too, that when I tell you that having that link go out and that posting tomorrow, and then having the formal time when that position announcement is out, having an additional 4 weeks, if I did not feel that was adequate, that's exactly what I would tell you. If at any point in the process you wanted to kind of tweak anything or do anything that I felt really would undermine the fidelity of the process, I won't be shy, I will tell you, right? So I think this would be, we'll get off to a great start, and again, that position posting will be out there. And during that time, there's that 4-week period. It's very quiet for you folks. I'm not sharing who's applied because it's confidential, but I'm monitoring applications as they're coming in. I'm contacting most of the applicants. If there are those who are just flat unqualified, I probably wouldn't, but most of the applicants I'm contacting, having conversations with, asking questions, getting to know them a little bit better. Doing background checks, not official reference checks, because due to confidentiality we can't, but that's where our networking and our organization really comes to the fore, because I would have the opportunity to learn far more than is contained in an application about the candidates. So after all of that, we would all come together. I would share any and all applications with you. I have a spreadsheet that shows you all of the applicants and their work history, their educational background. We would discuss each and every one of them. I would share anything beyond what's on paper that I know about these folks with you. It's the only part of the process that's done in closed session per the Open Meetings Act, because the candidates request confidentiality in their applications. You go to closed session to discuss the candidates so that those applications remain confidential until and unless you select those candidates that you want to interview, right? So in closed session, you're reviewing those, and you have then plenty of time to go through application materials that would be in front of you. We'll go back into open session. In open session, by letter designation, you're going to identify which candidates you would like to interview. Once there's a successful motion, we would read aloud the names and positions of those folks, and now it's public. The identity of the other applicants remains confidential per their request. And then we do a little bit more work that night to prepare for those first round interviews. At this point, things pick up and move rather quickly, but they typically do in our search processes. Know that too. This is not rushing things. The next week we would come back together and you would conduct first round interviews. Typically that's with 4 to 6 candidates, although we do not give you a minimum or a maximum. You're welcome to interview any and all candidates that you think are viable candidates that you may have some interest in and that you'd like to know more about before making any further decisions about them. So our first round interviews are up to 90 minutes. Because of that, we typically don't do any more than 2 per night, because that's pretty grueling. It's over 3 hours of interviews, and so we space them out. Typically, it's going to take 2 to 3 nights of first round interviews. You'll come back another night to deliberate and select candidates that you'd like to advance as finalists. Bear in mind that part of the reason we have you come back is that when you're conducting interviews, we're going to provide opportunities for people who are watching the interviews to provide you with additional feedback based on what they see and hear. They're going to be able to tell you what they're impressed by for each of the candidates, what may concern them about the candidate, and what questions they may have about those candidates. So you're going to get all that data to consider. Also, 99% of the time, I think, when candidates come before you, they're going to bring you additional materials to review. And you're going to be taking a lot of notes in the interviews. So we encourage you to walk away from the interviews afterward, come back another night after you've had a chance to deliberate on your own and review all of these and make a decision about who to advance. Not always, but typically that's 2 people. 2 is ideal. I've had districts only bring 1 back. I've had it happen that it's 3. We'll accommodate again whatever you feel you need to do, but typically 2 people. Those folks would come back the following week. They would present to you that evening. It would be a combination now the second time of a presentation, formal presentation on a topic of your choice. So it's an opportunity for you to identify a topic where you want to hear from the candidates in far greater detail than you would in an answer to an interview question. So you'll get to choose that. It's also an opportunity for you to see the candidate's presentation style, because they would be standing and using a PowerPoint or some other means to convey their message to you. And then they would sit down and have a second formal interview. Again, people who are viewing the interviews would have an opportunity to provide feedback to you. But during the day, we separate those. We don't do those on the same night because we have the candidates come into the district. So on separate days, 1 day for one finalist, 1 day for the other. The candidates would spend the day in the district, and we would schedule meetings for them to meet with various stakeholder groups. And again, that typically includes high school students, staff members, administrators. Normally we separate administrators and not have them present at the meetings with other staff members, parents and community members, any other particular groups you may identify as being critical for those folks to meet with. And it's an opportunity for, and we don't limit those groups, by the way. Other than perhaps high school students being selected by the high school principal, they try to find representative groups of high school students. But otherwise, we put broad invitations out that are not limited to anybody who's a member of those groups who would like to come and participate. They can ask questions of the candidates. The candidate has a chance to respond. You're not present at those because we ask you not to be, so that people can feel free without feeling like they have to be cautious about what they're asking. Ask any questions they might have. And then we ask those that are present to provide feedback, again, based on that experience, that we provide to all board members. So it's another data point for you to consider, and it's another opportunity for your constituents to be involved and engaged in the process. If there were to be any additional steps that you felt was necessary to include, we would talk about that. But the one that has been most commonly used by districts in the searches that I've done have been site visits, where a subcommittee of the board goes to the work site of each of the final candidates, has an opportunity to ask questions of people that your final candidates work with and for. And those three folks are providing kind of a written synopsis of what they see and hear to the other four board members. Not a recommendation, but just here's what we saw and heard. And it can make a difference when, it's one thing to have the candidate in front of you and have the opportunity to interact and hear from them. It's another thing for you to be able to interact with people that the candidates work with and for, to hear from them and to get a little bit of a different perspective on is what you see really what you're going to get. So once you've collected all of this data through this whole process, you would come back together and you would make the determination as to who it is that is best suited to be your next superintendent. In the very unlikely event, this has happened, I think only a couple of times in our history, but in the unlikely event you were to believe at that point that you had yet to find the right person, we encourage that you never want to settle, right? You have to make an affirmative decision and feel like the person that you're choosing is well suited and well prepared to be your next superintendent and to lead this district in the way that you need him or her to. But if you were to draw the conclusion that we're not there yet, and we need to continue the search, we would simply have dialogue at that point about what options were available, how we would go about that. And my job is not completed until your job is completed. So I'd be right here with you, continuing to work with you until we met with success. It's probably not as brief as you were hoping for. I apologize.
That's okay, John. Thank you. I know that several of us had an opportunity to speak with you at our subcommittee on Monday, and other board members have not. They were encouraged to watch the video. I think there was about 600 views the last time I looked, so there's quite a few community members who were engaged in what happened in the conversation that we had at the subcommittee the other evening. I think that we need to put a motion on the table, and then we certainly can ask any questions and have board dialogue. So I don't know if you're comfortable standing up there, if you want to sit and
I'm
answer.
fine standing here.
Okay.
Do you have any questions? Sure.
Okay. If I can get a recommendation?
I'll recommend that the Novi Community School District Board of Education contract to Michigan Leadership Institute, MLI, to conduct a search for the district's next superintendent and finalize a timeline similar to the draft proposal.
Do we have support?
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Cook and supported by Mr. Mena. Does anyone here at the table have any specific questions for John? Go ahead, Mr. Cook.
I've got a few. Thank you for your time. And I believe you mentioned the other night and tonight that if somebody applies, you don't rule them out for any reason. You present all applicants to the board for their consideration.
What I will do is, You're going to be handed a binder that night when we have that first meeting with a lot of information that I won't go into now, but it'll include the application materials on anybody who I would perceive to be potentially a viable candidate. If there are people who are flatly unqualified, for example, and you get that sometimes, you just do. I'll give you a spreadsheet. I think it's my obligation to make sure you see every single person that's applied. So yes, you will become aware of everyone that's applied, the work history, the degrees that they hold. You'll see all of that, and I'll touch on all of them with you. You'll have the application materials for the bulk of those applicants in your binders. I'm going to have with me a single copy of the application materials on the rest. In the event that I've guessed wrong and there's somebody in that group that I don't think you're going to have interest in, but you may have interest in, we'll stop, photocopy those, and put those in your hands as well. What's really critical is to know that whatever number of applicants you have, ultimately it's your choice to determine who it is that you'd like to bring into interview. You can choose from any of those applicants, whatever their background, qualifications, experiences, et cetera are. It's going to be totally up to you folks. And so I'm not going to only present you with a certain number and say, here are the ones you're going to choose from. You're going to see all of them.
The other question I have is, it's kind of rare for people to reach out to me, but they have. And there's been some question about political or otherwise biasness in viewpoints of you or your organization. And are there any assurances that that will not come into play in some of this vetting or into this process? We try very hard to keep the political viewpoints out of the classroom and let the kids make their own decision. You want to verify that's
so I would be your process guy. And I even tell your stakeholders that when I meet with them. I'm the process guy, right? So I'm the person who's going to come in and bring a process with me that has been utilized successfully and vetted and tweaked and improved upon over the years too. That will allow you to conduct a search, again, that meets the criteria talked about: thorough, transparent, inclusive. So my job is not to tell you who you should and should not interview or steer any particular candidates towards or away from the district. My job is to present you with the strongest applicant field I possibly can, based on relevant experiences that they may bring to the table, and to give you as many options and as strong options as possible. So whatever my personal, and we all have personal viewpoints, right? We do, and I have my own. They have no place in a process like this, and you will never see or hear any whiff of any of that throughout the process, because it just is irrelevant in terms of how this works. The opinions that matter, in other words, are going to be yours. You're the decision makers. I'm the process person.
The last thing I kind of had is
We can come back to it.
yeah, it'll come back to me.
Okay.
It'll come back to me.
Do we have any other questions specific for John? And then I'll certainly open up the table for any additional comments.
I was just gonna say, I did spend some time watching. Thank you for, for taking the time to spend with our committee. And I thought that was very informative. And I did take some time to make a couple calls to some folks that you had worked with. But I was really interested. I know you guys, the committee, spent a lot of time asking questions, and I was hoping, as we sit here today, we would get feedback from the three of you. So.
And our experience
Yeah.
with.
Because my assumption is that since it's an action item, that the committee felt comfortable from moving it forward. So I just wanted to listen to see what some of the feedback from you guys were.
I'm happy to share my experience. So asking Dr. Matthews his opinion on some search firms, and he shared that with us. And we talked about national search firms and local search firms and the benefit of potentially looking into a national search firm versus a local search firm. It sounds like this local search firm has an opportunity to offer some national geographic outreach that the others may bring to the table. The difference in expense is extraordinary in a national search firm, and it didn't sound like there was really as much benefit that you would receive from paying double or triple the amount of money, so that was one thing. We asked John quite a few questions on the process. We asked him about community engagement. We talked about using community engagement opportunities that were both in person and that were utilizing a survey so that people who were unable to participate either in person, maybe they didn't feel comfortable with that we could reach out to as many stakeholders as possible. That was one thing that he shared that I think was important to me. I'm trying to think what some of the other questions and conversations were that we had on Monday evening. Personally, I feel like a search is important, and the future of the district, to have that search is extremely important. We probably have some wonderful internal candidates. We have a lot of level 5 leaders in this district, including Dr. Weber here. So I'm just gonna put that right on the table, that this is not about Dr. Weber and not wanting him. Certainly, he has been an exceptional, extraordinary leader in our district, and the timing was what it was, and I find that to be extremely unfortunate, but I believe in a process, and I support MLI coming through and doing a full vetted search process for our district. So that was why I would support them. I'm not sure if Mrs. Murphy has any specific comments about our meeting the other day, and questions that maybe you asked and were answered that could be helpful tonight.
I appreciated that the job is the job, and that until we're satisfied, the job's not done. Having sat on the previous superintendent search, where we hired Dr. Matthews, a really good decision by our board to do that. Probably one of the decisions I am most proud of having served to bring you here. But we had a School Exec Connect, very expensive firm that searched for us last time. We had one candidate from out of state. That was it. The rest were all in, and truthfully, the School Exec Connect people that assisted us were all Michigan people, so no different than the experience that we've had. So, and I don't remember last time having a survey that that everybody could access. It was 12 years ago. I'm sure maybe we did have the technology. I just don't know that we used it as readily as we have in the last, so many years. So I really do like that aspect of it, that this is gonna be something that we're gonna get just everyone's feedback on. There's not gonna be any question that we'll have, hopefully all the voices in the community. So I like that aspect of it. You talked about the data points, you talked about those again tonight, all those different data points that we will have as a board. It is very difficult. It's difficult to sit in this seat at times. And to hear I guess I'll just say that people's perceptions are not always reality, and maybe that seems kind of counter, because I always hear perception is the reality, but until you've sat in this seat, I really think it's difficult. There's so many rumors, and we sit here and we can't
really do much about that, because people are gonna think and say what they wanna say. I'm sorry, I digress, because obviously we're talking about the search, but all that to say, that I am certainly prepared to support the decision of the board, to have a process that I pray brings us the very, very best candidate. And there's a lot of pressure on you, quite honestly. You've heard these people and what their expectation is. I'm glad you were here to hear that. So, that said, I thought we had a very good discussion the other night. I do like all the additional data points that you're going to be bringing to us. I'm gonna just clear my schedule for the next 2 months for all the reading that we're gonna need to do, and the additional time that it will take. I think hopefully we're all committed to that. But, that said, Dr. Matthews' shoes are gonna be really big ones to fill.
Well, if I can just speak to that, the mistake you would make is trying to find Dr. Matthews' clone.
Oh, right.
There is no such thing. Or in an effort to replace such an outstanding superintendent, to find the perfect candidate. There is no such thing. And the trap that you can fall into is waiting to find the perfect person, and any perceived flaw being a reason to eliminate candidates from consideration. So you're looking for excellence, not perfection, and it's going to be really critical to keep that in mind. There are excellent candidates out there. You're an outstanding district. I fully expect there's going to be significant interest. And so you're right, I understand there's high expectations. And I'm not going to stand here and guarantee anything other than, again, to tell you we'll stand on our track record. And to guarantee you, nobody's going to outwork us. It's the approach we take is that failure is not an option. It's just not. And we don't just want to perform this function for you. We want to do it in an outstanding fashion. I shared with the subcommittee when I was here the other day several letters of recommendation from numerous Oakland County districts I've worked with. I have others from other districts outside of Oakland County too. I want to be in a position when this is said and done to reach out to you and ask you to do the same, and to have you feel that you can gladly do so, and to do so very sincerely. I put enough pressure on myself that the external pressure is just fine.
Just for the record, I did not say that Dr. Matthews was perfect.
I heard that, and I took note of that to show my wife.
But I do appreciate you, the straight talk. Obviously, that was straight talk. So, appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Cook?
One of the things from the other night, and it goes back to what I was gonna ask again, but I asked if the pool of candidates the pool of applicants you're getting was not quite up to snuff, if you would go out and actually recruit and contact. And I guess, I kind of like your answer. If you could, reiterate what you had said on Wednesday about that, then appreciate it.
Talk about pressure. Now I'm pressured to give an equally good answer, but I'll just say that that's a critical part of this. Is we certainly don't just put this material out, put the application information out, and sit back and hope that we attract a qualified pool of candidates. A critical part of our job is to reach out and recruit people who we think would be outstanding candidates for you to consider, and who could potentially be a great fit. The more of those folks that we can include in the candidate pool, the better we feel about it too. So, and it's not just, I have deep ties throughout Southeast Michigan, right? Through having been a longtime educator in Southeast Michigan, a superintendent in 2 different school districts in the area. the work that I've done subsequently with so many school districts in the area, but our organization is statewide. And I rely on that network as well to help with the recruitment process, and we support one another in that regard. One of the things that we benefit from is that we conduct an annual superintendent preparation academy that attracts typically 30 to 40, roughly, aspiring superintendents who participate in that annually. Gives us an opportunity to interact with those folks, get to know them a little bit, and it just puts more individuals on our radar that we have knowledge about that we might not otherwise, that we have then the ability to also reach out to. And we're certainly not limited to those folks, nor do we favor those folks just because they participated in that. But we do know about them, and we know which of those we're impressed by and have a high opinion of, and who we even, as they leave the academy, we have them provide some feedback to us that indicates too the type of district they might be willing to work in, what they're looking for, what their aspirations are. So we're able to use that too to identify those people who may be looking for a district like yours, and then have the opportunity to reach out to them. But again, I wouldn't want you to think for a second we're limited to that. That's kind of a bonus for us. That's something additional that we have access to. But you know, anybody and everybody who's out there, whether they're current superintendents, aspiring superintendents, it's fair game. And again, knowing what I know about your district and your track record and your reputation, I know that the bar is high, and I know that that's going to result in, that is some pressure on me, right, to go out and recruit some very high-quality candidates. So during that 4-week period that I talked about, and really even the 6, including the couple before the formal announcements out, it may be quiet for you, but it's not for me. I'm working hard behind the scenes during that time.
The other thing that I liked was that you work really hard on getting the stakeholders and meeting with stakeholders to develop what characteristics they want in a superintendent. And that's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to, is some of that feedback, more of that feedback. It just, to me, you're not, it's those characteristics is what the board has to work with, what the staff gets to work with, and the likes of that. So those are the characteristics that I place a lot of value on, and appreciate that you guys are going to do your due diligence on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Do we have any,
One, potentially two really quick questions.
Sure.
Yes or no? I don't see the name on the list. Was your firm involved with the search for Rockford?
Yes.
Did you or a member of your firm reach out to our superintendent, Steve Matthews, to introduce him to that position?
Yes.
No more questions.
Mrs. Hood?
Yeah, I don't have a question though. I just have a comment.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So it is interesting and heartbreaking to me that we are being asked to vote on a superintendent search tonight, April 21st, as it was pretty much a fait accompli back on April 5th when our board president emailed the school community announcing a search. Dr. Matthews received his offer for the superintendency of Rockford Schools on Friday, March 25th. That night, this board received its first email from a community member requesting that we quickly consider Dr. Weber to fill the superintendency of Novi Community Schools, as he was now a finalist for the superintendency of Northville Schools. I had a count in my comments as I was preparing, I had a count of my emails, but they have already been FOIA'd, and we know what the count and the balance was. And as an aside, the emails that a public body like a Board of Education receives are not secret. So I have given estimates to people who have asked me over the last few weeks, how many emails have you gotten? Do you have a feel for how many support Dr. Weber, blah, blah, blah. And it is simple transparency. A few misinformed community members apparently think this is leaking or not operating with integrity. And to paraphrase the duck to the pigeon, all you had to do was ask. So this board was not required to do a search for this district's next superintendent, and I certainly would have supported promoting Dr. Weber to superintendent of Novi Schools immediately. In fact, there are many studies that support promoting from within leaders who have proven track records. It maintains culture and productivity, improves retention, decreases costs, and lowers risks by knowing what and who you are getting. To say otherwise is nonsense. I felt and I feel it is the best course of action for our district and our students to promote Dr. Weber. A study was referenced in comments to the board last week that might have been relevant if the circumstances were different, but in this case, our high achiever wanted to stay. Now, we need to rush the thorough and expansive search that's been alluded to for the last month. As requested, I watched the 2-hour video of the Superintendent Search Committee meeting from Monday. And with no disrespect to Mr. Silveri, it seems fitting that the Michigan Leadership Institute assist Novi in filling its superintendency vacancy, as it was MLI that helped Rockford fill their vacancy. Notwithstanding the unprofessional, disrespectful, and graceless manner by which this process has unfolded, where process is something other than a transparent public discussion of potential next steps to replace our superintendent. Expedience, unfortunately, dictates the need to support this recommendation. I look forward to a dialogue of mutual respect, unity, and civility, and will unfortunately be voting yes on this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hood. Mr. Smith, did you have anything further, or no? Mrs. Roney does?
No.
Yeah, it just feels like I'm in like some bizarro world. Days and days and days and weeks go by, nothing. And then the subcommittee meets on Monday, and here it is on Thursday. After, 4 weeks, you guys weren't prepared to talk about promoting RJ, but after 3 days, you're prepared to hire a search firm? Saying, John, and it makes sense, but it just seems odd to me. You know, I've said the Serenity Prayer like 50 times in the last 10 minutes. I don't even know what to say. We spend a day in their district watching them or talking to a few people. They spend 90 minutes during an initial interview. They come here and talk. This dude's been doing the job for the last 11, 12 years, every day. Obviously powerless over some of the decisions that are made at the table these days, and it just breaks my heart, and I don't think we're doing a good job, like it's been said. I won't support the motion.
You have, in here that you're gonna meet with stakeholders. I assume that's our administrators, some teachers, the people that have made this district great.
Yes.
So they are going to get a voice in this.
Yeah, and just to emphasize, not some, when we provide those opportunities, we, for example, with the staff members, we hold the meetings after student dismissal times, and try to make that as convenient as we can, and the invitation goes out to all of them. So it's not limited, it would be open to anybody and everybody, any staff member who would be willing to invest the time, if they're able to be part of that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you. Any other comments? Questions for Mr. Silveri? Sure. Yes.
One
Mrs.
more
Smith.
thing, I was just gonna say, listening to
Yes.
Mr. Smith, I will change my vote to no.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Mena?
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
trustee Hood,
No.
trustee Mena, yes, trustee Murphy,
Yes.
trustee Roney,
Yes.
trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
trustee Smith.
No.
Motion carries 5-2. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
All right, thanks.
Alrighty, our next action item is the personnel report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. I will turn this to Dr. Kim.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. This evening we have 4 resignations and retirements. Dr. Steve Matthews, Superintendent of Schools. Patricia Hokett, Social Studies teacher at Adult Education. Tim Stotler, Special Education Paraprofessional at Novi High School. And Marla Wheatley, Transportation Assistant. We also have 1 leave of absence. Christina Stefano. This is a year 1 childcare leave of absence.
Thank you, Dr. Kinzer. If I may get a recommendation for the, or a motion for the recommendation, Mr. Mena?
Yeah, I move that we adopt the personnel report as presented.
Do we have support?
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Roney. Any comments or questions for Dr. Kinzer?
I'm surprised you didn't pronounce Mrs. Stefano's other name.
I practiced all day long and realized that I wasn't going to get it right.
I did not know that was her, that she had a hyphenated name, because my kids had her. She's a wonderful teacher, so. But I don't really want to support this,
I don't think any of us
for the
do.
obvious reason.
Any other comments? Questions? Okay, seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 6-1. We'll move on to our third action item, which is the Panasonic Automotive Systems Company of America donation. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. This is a gift that is presented to the board. It's a donation from, as Dr. Ruskin mentioned, the Panasonic Automotive Systems Company. It's a donation of $10,000 to Frog First Robotics Team 503, and we would recommend that the board accept this donation as presented with appreciation and thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Cook?
I recommend that the Novi Community Schools Board of Education accept the donation as presented with appreciation and thanks.
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Cook and supported by Mr. Smith. Any comments or questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you're okay.
Have we gotten this before in the past?
I don't recall that we've had one from this company before.
No, I don't think we
Okay,
have.
I didn't think so. That's awesome.
It's fantastic.
Mr. Cook?
Yeah, it really, the Frog Forest goes out and solicits as much as they can, because that's how they're funded.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, it's greatly appreciated with their main sponsors, Magna and others. And Panasonic, I do believe, actually has been in their list of sponsors in the past. But it's nice to see that the policy that we have for donations is actually coming to the board, so we can show appreciation. You know, it's something that's been there for a while, and we got away from, and I'm glad to see it back. So with appreciation and thanks, it's, you know, $10,000.
Thank you. Mr. Mena?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I don't know to what extent, how Panasonic gets involved with the robotics team. I don't know, Paul, if you have any idea, but.
The electronics
Yeah, and I
videos
don't,
and stuff like
maybe we can get some info from the robotics team. It's, like, I started, you know, in the technology field at a young age, and to have the opportunity to do what these kids are doing right now, here at our high school is fantastic. I mean, you know, see what they're doing on a regular basis, the type of programming that these kids are doing at such a young age. I'm telling you, it's at a level, it's at a professional level at this point. I mean, it really, really is. So, again, you know, thank you to Panasonic for this donation to Frog Force. Yeah, kind of, at some point, I'm sure somebody from robotics will actually call us and let us know, you know, how they're actually directly involved with Panasonic. So that'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Mena. Mrs. Roney?
Do we send them any type of, like, certificate of appreciation or anything?
In conjunction with Frog Force, we typically do.
Okay, thank you.
And just as an aside, Frog Force is in Houston this week at the World Championships.
As we speak, yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you again. Yes?
No, well, it wasn't about this, it was about Frog Force. Well, I'll ask later.
Okay. Thank you again to Panasonic, and I think we're ready for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. Next on our action items, we have policy updates and revisions. Dr. Matthews?
Thank you. This policy update went to the Governance and Policy Committee on March 14th. And this recommendation comes from Miller Johnson, the district's policy provider, and it's a child fine policy update. And the question was asked, do we have to name specifically the people as well as, instead of just the position, and our policy provider says that we do. I know that historically, we've tried to not name specific people because when and if those change, we have to change the policy. But in this particular case, Miller Johnson says that we need to do that. And so this policy comes to the board tonight for approval, having been discussed at the April 7th meeting.
Thank you. If I may get a motion for the recommendation. Mrs. Murphy?
I'll move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education approve the addition to policy 2002 as presented above.
Do we have support?
Support.
Recommended by Mrs. Murphy and supported by Mrs. Roney. Any comments or specific questions on this?
So I'm assuming that the only changes are the things in yellow.
Yes.
And is there a reason there's brackets around the director of special ed?
Not great reasons, I don't think.
Okay, it's just weird that that's bracketed in both places, but the section.
I think it was just to highlight that those.
Oh, okay,
Changes.
okay. Because that's a complete addition.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, it might be, yeah.
Mr. Cook was going to
Yeah,
offer some clarity.
I think the whole policy is a complete addition. It was something that was missed when we converted over.
We've been doing child find in the district, but as Mr. Cook mentions, the specific language wasn't in the policy, and so we put this in policy 2002, excuse me.
Okay.
So it's not a brand new policy, it's an existing policy that you added.
Correct, this
okay.
section too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Administrative regulations, have they been developed around this?
That's a good question. I don't think they have, but we'll check and see.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, I think we're ready for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. Our next action item is EnviroClean contract. Dr. Matthews?
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. Our EnviroClean contract expires on June 30th of 2022, so this June. We come to the board to extend that contract for EnviroClean. They currently are our custodial provider. We worked with EnviroClean for several years now. We believe they have improved their service to us. We believe that they have a good supervisor staff right now. And we believe that relationship will continue to improve. We recognize that there have been some difficulties with our custodial performance in the past, but Mr. McIntyre and his team, Mr. Dragoo in maintenance, they worked hard to improve their service, and we believe that this contract recognizes that, and so we would ask the board to approve this. This was discussed at the April 7th meeting. If you have questions, Mr. McIntyre would be happy and excited to have a chance to speak tonight.
If I can get a motion for the recommendation. Mr. Mena?
I move that we approve the contract sector for EnviroClean as presented.
Do we have support?
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Mena and supported by Mr. Cook. Do we have any specific questions for Mr. McIntyre?
This is
No?
his big chance.
Just
Smile, smile,
just a
Greg.
comment.
Just a comment, okay.
Just a
Mr.
comment,
Cook
you know,
has a
I
comment.
appreciate you, keeping this going, and at least, it's basically kicking the can down the road for one more year. It's only a one-year extension, so appreciate that, with all the troubles we've had, and so, I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cook. Mr. Mena?
And again, some of the issues, I'm not exactly sure, but, was, due to the fact that, obviously it's hard for them to fill positions. Do you find that they're having an easier time filling positions now, or have they been able to fill positions, or do they still have a huge number that needs to be filled in order to service us the way we need to be serviced here?
Yes, at the beginning of the year, we had like a 60% fill rate. Now we're more than 90%. So to help with that endeavor, they increased the starting salary to $15 an hour. They have an incentive program. We continue to contribute towards their health care for the employees. We also provide lunches for them as well. So now we're able to retain the ones that we're getting now as well too. So we're happy about the progress that we've made. We continue to monitor the monthly report cards that we get from each building every month, and some improvement has been shown. So we're satisfied with the direction that we're going in.
Do you feel that there is a correlation between the fill rate then and the grades we're seeing on the report cards?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I also want to say that we no longer do a capitation. It's more like a fee for service. So if the contract calls for 10 people to work and only 8 shows up, we only pay for 8. So as a result, through February, we received about $65,000 in credits back from EnviroClean.
That was a change that Mr. McIntyre was able to negotiate in the contract from the previous contract, and so we really appreciate Mr. McIntyre's diligence with that.
Nice job.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, I think we're ready for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. We will move on to our next action item, which is the bond purchase resolution. Dr. Matthews?
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. Tonight we bring two resolutions to you. One is a bond purchase agreement resolution, and the next one that we'll consider is the bond issue resolution. This is an outgrowth of the selling of the bonds that we did recently. And so on January 20th, 2022, the board authorized the sale of the 2022 school building and site fund bond series 2. The purpose of this bond authorizing resolution was to aggregate the principal sum of not more than $55 million for the purpose of funding a portion of the bond project. The bonds shall be designated 2022 School Building and Site Fund Series 2. And we had a bond refunding team of Stiefel Nicholas, financial advisors were PFM, and the bond counsel was Troon Law. And so this bond purchase agreement is presented to the board tonight for consideration and adoption, and it allows us to have to finalize the action on purchasing those bonds. And Mr. McIntyre, if you have questions on this resolution, is able to answer those questions.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. If I can get a motion for the recommendation, please. Mrs. Murphy?
I'll move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education, in the best interest of the Novi Community School District, adopt the attached bond purchase agreement resolution to purchase the bonds in the amount not to exceed $55 million.
We have support?
I'll support.
Recommended by Mrs. Murphy and supported by Mr. Smith. Do we have any questions specific to this for Mr. McIntyre?
This was presented in our last meeting.
Right.
too.
Yep. All right, seeing
Is
none?
this the one we did a lot of signatures on?
Yes, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing none, I think we're ready for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. We'll just roll right in, Dr. Matthews, to the bond issue resolution.
And so this is the second legally required resolution for the board to pass, and this is a ratifying resolution about the bond, issuing the bonds. And so once you have agreed to buy them, you also have to agree to issue them. And so this is the second of that legally required effort that we needed to go through. And so tonight, we would ask you to approve this bond issue resolution as well.
Thank you. If I can get a motion for the recommendation. Mrs. Hood?
I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education, in the best interest of the Novi Community School District, adopt the attached ratifying resolution to purchase the bonds in the amount of $27,182,309.
Support.
Recommended by Mrs. Hood and supported by Mr. Cook. Do we have any questions in this regard?
Just to clarify, this was the authorization for the refunding that we did along with the original bonds. We also refunded some bonds, which gave a refund to our taxpayers in the community, and this is that bond issue resolution for that.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any specific questions for Mr. McIntyre? No. Okay. Mrs. Roney?
So technically, we saved our taxpayers $27 million.
No, we reduced,
Nope.
we saved them $2 million.
$2 million, okay.
By refunding $27 million, so we got a lower interest rate.
So $2 million, okay.
Right, and so that savings goes directly to our taxpayers. The district does not benefit from that, it's the taxpayers in the community that benefit from that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. We have one more item on our action items this evening. It is the Village Oaks Playground Equipment. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. This is a project that comes, that many students at Village Oaks are very anxious for, and many staff at Village Oaks, and also many parents in the community. The project team, which consists of the administration, Plant Moran Cressa, TMP, our architect, and McCarthy Smith, our construction manager, is recommending the purchase of playground equipment for Village Oaks Elementary to replace the current aging equipment. That current aging equipment has not been at the district, or at the building all year, and so this is really needed. The team interviewed and selected a vendor via the consortium purchases to ensure that the equipment is consistent from a manufacturing and warranty perspective. In February 2022, the team conducted interviews with two playground vendors, BCI Burke and Pintura Landscape Structures. Pintura Landscape Structures was selected as a district vendor and has successfully worked on other district projects. And so the following consortium proposal from Sourcewell, which is a national company that vets vendors, would be for Village Oaks playground equipment. It comes to you tonight for approval. This has not been discussed at the board table before, and we're asking for approval tonight in a departure from what we typically do, because there's a need to approve this resolution so they can order this equipment, so they can get it into the Village Oaks playground. We have Kevin Donnelly here from Plant Moran Cressa, who could explain a bit more about this for the board before you vote. Mr. Donnelly.
Good evening. Dr. Matthews, I think you've explained it extremely well. I will give the board a quick update after tonight if things are approved. All the landscape, hardscape, the turf, the surfacing, that's all ongoing right now. This is the last piece to complete the playground at Village Oaks. So we're hoping to have everything ready to accept equipment here in June. If we order the equipment, if we approve it tonight and order the equipment early next week, the equipment should be here in June and installed in July prior to the start of school. So I'm here to answer any questions that the board may have, and looking forward to moving forward.
Just a comment, I know some weeks back we did a site tour over at Village Oaks, and it looked like the space was just sitting there screaming for equipment. So.
Yep, it is. And the space is screaming for equipment because all the kids in the building are screaming for equipment. So we would ask that you move this resolution and approve it tonight.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Mrs. Roney?
Can you just give us a little overview of like what you have planned for the area? Like, I know when we redid it years ago, we had this cool slide that went from the upper level down to the lower level. I mean, is there any like cool feature like that?
Don't quote me on it, but I think it'll probably be your best playground in the district when it's all said and done. It's a robust playground with many different features. It has two major features that have a multitude of different activities that the children can do. It has zip lines, it has many different activity areas. It has inclusive areas for kids with disabilities so they can access all of the equipment. I don't have a drawing per se to share tonight, but I'm happy to do so after the meeting.
If we could, we'll get a drawing from Mr. Donnelly that we can share with the board. One of the best features is it's handicap accessible playground.
I love that. That's awesome.
Which is, many of our playgrounds have wood chips, and that's very difficult for some of our students. And so this playground will have a little bit different approach, and we really are excited that it's going to be handicap accessible so that it opens up our playground experience to all the students in the building.
Yeah, great, that's great.
If I can get a motion, Mrs. Hood?
Yes, as a Village Oaks parent, I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education approves the proposal and awards the contract to Ventura in the amount of $204,677.68.
Support.
Did you say that?
Yes,
Okay,
I said
was
that.
like, with your voice, I
My voice
can't
is
tell.
a little low, yes. Like my allergies are really bad. It is allergies.
Recommended by Mrs. Hood and supported by Mrs. Murphy. Do we have any further questions? Mr. Cook?
Just a comment, because the resource room is, close proximity, and I really appreciate that exiting the resource room, they did put ramps directly down into the playground for those kids. And, it's appreciated. At least they can get down. They may not be able to get back up. Or two-directional traffic, but at least they can get to it and enjoy this. So, thank you.
Thanks for 2.5 hours of your time.
Not a problem. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Do we have any other questions for him this evening? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Kevin. We appreciate
Thank
you
you. Have a
being
good
here
night.
and all your work.
Thanks, Kevin.
Are we gonna power through, or are we gonna take a little break, so?
Power.
Power through.
Okay,
The chief has spoken.
all right.
Okay. Next, we have information and discussion, Office of Academics, Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. This comes to the board. I just need some direction from the board, just some consensus on how to proceed. As the board is aware, with the pending departure of Dr. Weber, the Office of Academics will be in need of new leadership. Before we move forward, I just need to state publicly that Dr. Weber has continually sacrificed within his department to support other program and personnel needs in our district, and that has been very much appreciated over the 11 years we've worked together. Although I must admit that Dr. Weber sometimes brings that to my attention on a frequent basis. But that's because he advocates for kids, and so I appreciate that. And so the Office of Academics was able to be successful in no small measure due to the talent of Dr. Weber. But with his departure, the office needs to be staffed more appropriately, and so the question really for me, as I look till my last 10 weeks in the district, is how would the board like to proceed with this? Given my June 30th resignation that you approved this evening, instead of moving forward with a plan to staff the office, I will present 4 kind of options for the board, and if you could just kind of give me some sense, and if you can't come to a sense tonight, I can follow up with phone calls to each of you to get a sense of how you'd like me to proceed. But one, would post and hire the assistant superintendent for academics before I leave in June. This would provide the new superintendent with a high-quality assistant superintendent who would be in place to plan our back-to-school professional development, assist in the onboarding of new staff, and ensure that building administrators have a person to consult with before the start of school. Additionally, at least 1, if not 2, curriculum directors are needed to adequately staff the office. We could run the process so either one or both of these positions would be in place before July 1 as well to support the office and the new superintendent. The obvious downside to this plan is that the new superintendent does not have a hand in choosing his or her new staff. We could post, but with the understanding that the new superintendent would be part of the process. This option gives the new superintendent a voice in picking his or her staff, so we could post now, run the process over the summer, that new superintendent, her or him, would be able to participate in picking that person. Obviously, this delays getting people in place, and it would require some additional kind of focus to try to figure out how we support our back-to-school preparation. A third option would be to put interim internal staff in place to support the new superintendent. So an interim assistant superintendent, an interim curriculum director, for example, but with the understanding that the positions would be posted and permanent decisions would be made after the new superintendent is in place. This ensures that there would be bodies and staff and people ready to assist in the planning over the summer for the start of school, which comes, administrative staff by and large comes back the first part of August. Teachers come back that last week of August. New staff come back in the middle of August, or new teaching staff come back in the middle of August. And so we do need some people in place to help kind of manage all of that and make good preparation. If we go the interim route, it would give the new superintendent a running start because there would be people in place. But ultimately, that would also give the new superintendent a voice in picking who would be the new assistant superintendent and what the staffing levels would be in the Office of Academics. And then third, we could delegate beginning of school preparation to our building administrators. This is at one point appealing, but also in some terms, I think the least likely option, because our building administrators, when they come back in August, are very busy already. And so to put the onus on them for additional responsibilities, I think is a bit concerning to me, but it obviously is an option. The downside is delays kind of picking that permanent staff. But it does give the new superintendent the opportunity to identify who she or he would like for that new staff to be, and also how she or he would like that office to be staffed in general. It would rely on our current building leaders to prepare for the new year with the help of current existing staff. Darby Hoppenstedt, Shaylee Patel, and Jeff Dinkelman are three that remain that have been instrumental in planning those back-to-school activities in August. And helping staff get ready for the new year. And so we really have four options. One is to post and hire now before I leave in June. The second is to post, but with the understanding that the process would bleed over into the summer and probably into the fall. The third would be to put interim internal people into place to help get ready for the school year, giving the new superintendent people to help get the new school year started, but recognizing that those interim people would not be the permanent people. And then the fourth option would be to delegate some of the beginning of school preparation to our current building level administrators. So if I could just get a sense from the board how you would like me to proceed. I understand that I officially became a lame duck tonight, and so I don't want to presume that I have the kind of the blessing of the board to do as I would for the day-to-day running of the district. Because I obviously won't be here after June 30th. And so I wanted to come to the board with these four ideas. And if you have others, I'm more than willing to hear that. But these are the four ideas that I see how to move forward. And I just need some direction from this board as to how you would like me to proceed.
Steve, I'm happy to provide a little additional context in the fact that as I sit here, there's one other person in this room at these tables who's been serving this community longer than I have. So I have some knowledge of what this office entails. When I came in 2010, of course, we were 40th in the state of Michigan. We know where we've ended up. And the reason that happened is because of people who have put their shoulders into doing big, serious, heavy, often unnoticed work. What we've heard time and time again is a need for our community who desire continuity, consistency, and the ability to build trust. The office that I came into in August of 2010 and again, no disrespect, but none of you were here except Bobby, was left dormant for 6 months. The previous administration had chosen to leave it dormant for 6 months. As I've mentioned before, I came into an office that had 27 Title I violations that needed to be fixed. My assistant was Sheila Holly. It was Sheila and I. And I believe you were a .8 at that time because you were also helping out in community ed. So, for the board's perspective on these pieces and the things that we do to support our students, our teachers, and our administrators, this particular position is the core of our district in the sense that we are about teaching and learning. It would be like Ford Motor Company saying, we'll get around to dealing with the engineering part at some time. Our old cars are fine. I was hired by an outgoing cabinet, an outgoing superintendent, an outgoing business manager, and an outgoing HR person. My philosophy is, I think any of us, I think Dr. Matthews is going to a job where he didn't hire one of his assistants. I'm going to a job where I didn't hire any of my assistants, perhaps. I haven't resigned yet. So if that's the arbiter of making a decision to give control to a new person coming in, I would humbly say that I'm an existence proof that that is really not a reason to leave an office dormant, to saddle our principals with the obligation to do everything that they need to do well beyond a couple days in the beginning of August. Our teachers, our principals, and our kids deserve to have an office that is predictable on their part and that has some vestige of a continuation of the work that we've done. Dr. Matthews and I will be leaving. Our teachers, our principals, and our kids deserve to have consistency in that space. And what Dr. Matthews said about the fact of staffing size, perhaps that's my fault. Perhaps that's because I am not a person to blow my own horn or to come here and tell you the work that our team does in everything they do. I wish you could see it. I wish each of you really knew the sacrifices that this team has made to help our kids in ways that are profound. I was at our school council today. Got an awesome card from a PTO parent. Another PTO parent says this to me. In the pandemic, what you all put together from an aspect of multi-tiered systems of support and from getting additional help for my daughter saved her. So I'd like you to think about that. When you think about leaving a position dormant, when you think about power and control and what you want to give somebody who's new. And I'd like you to think about our kids. Right on? He spoke wonderfully. And that's what we should all be about in every way, in every fashion. And so, as a historian, I figured maybe you'd appreciate the perspective, maybe you wouldn't. But being somebody who's been here, save one person longer than any of you, I think I might have a little bit of an idea how this works. Thanks.
Thanks, RJ.
So, I'll just tell you how I'm feeling right now. Is that okay?
Yeah, it is.
So, obviously, this vision that we have for the district and the strategic planning and everything that we've done as a community, as a whole, that's stuff that you've already all been a part of. It's stuff that we are on a great trajectory right now, in my opinion. You know what that trajectory is. You know what's been done, as well as Dr. Weber. In my opinion, having you be the person that looks to hire that and staff that position gives the superintendent the opportunity to kind of hit the ground running without, that additional piece. So I'm even though you're a lame duck, you've, in my opinion, you've earned our trust.
And I trust that you've built enough here, you've been invested here. And I know RJ has too, that you will do what's right for our kids. So I am comfortable with you moving forward.
I was just gonna say, it seems like a really important decision. It's late. Some of us, I haven't eaten. It just seems like a really important decision to come to tonight. That's what I was gonna say. Plus, a bio break would be nice. But after listening to RJ, I'm prepared to follow his advice, which would be to post the positions and fill them. So that was short.
I will go to, even before listening to RJ, and that solidified it, before even coming in here this evening, when you had, sent to the board that this position would need to be filled. That's your job, and you know the district well, and I would support you in filling that position so that that piece of the puzzle is solid, and you and your team can know what needs to happen moving forward into the fall, and I would want you to do that. Do we have any other comments, or?
I'll just
Yes, please.
pile on. I don't trust anybody here more than I trust Mrs. Murphy's judgment. And I would have to go with that. I agree, and I assume that we have worthy candidates internal to this district who know what we do here. And so I would absolutely support that.
Do we have any other, Mr. Cook?
Yeah, Dr. Matthews, I posed mine in the form of a question because I was more curious as to what was, your line of thoughts there. It's been explained very well tonight, and I agree that to leave that position open longer than necessary is, or longer than it needs to be, is kind of foolish. And you in your first explanation, you did list a couple of people that I think are very qualified for what you had talked about. But I really think that by filling the assistant superintendent position or posting for it, it does create a sense of
Mr. Mena?
Yeah, if I can, I'm just trying to figure out, just kind of going through the four that you gave us. Can you just explain what it would look like if, I think we've got consensus now, so this is just a question. What would it look like if you went ahead and posted the position for the assistant superintendent and filled the two director positions as interim, or vice versa? I'm just trying to get your sense for what the upside and downside is of either of those two scenarios, which I don't really think is one that you offer as part of your four.
I think having a permanent assistant superintendent for academics would continue the forward momentum. I think there's still room for discussion about what the office specifically looks like, and so it might be best to, or one option would be to get some interim people in there to move it forward, but recognizing that it may be with a commitment from the district to make sure that those are permanent positions as we move into 22-23. It may be that the timing doesn't work out. I mean, it would be difficult to post all three positions at once and fill them permanently. And so, but I do think filling the assistant superintendent for academics permanently is a good first step. And then once that's done, we could kind of have that discussion with that person and look at what would be good options. And it might be the best option to have some interim positions for those curriculum directors. Although I do think we have, as Mrs. Hood mentioned, some really solid internal people that could step into those positions and do them very well on a permanent basis. But I do think that's as Dr. Weber and Dr. Kinzer and I kind of talked this through, the first one is really to get the assistant superintendent for academics in place. Once that's in place, I think then the rest will kind of open up and we'll see what would be best, and we would come back to the board with a more nuanced plan at that point.
Would this be something you'd post immediately, and how do you see the timeframe again?
The timeframe, we'd post immediately. If I think we have consensus tonight, Dr. Kinzer can get that posting out tomorrow. We were thinking through May 13th, that's 3 full weeks. We know people that we can send it out to. We know the people in the district that we would be interested in targeting as well. We would do one of our HumanX district leader kind of surveys with those people, interviews with those people to get a good sense of what their leadership is. On the 4th week, the 5th week, we could do a panel interview, and then they could come to me for a final interview. And so we think by early June, that first board meeting in June, which is not June 2nd, it's June 9th, we think that we could probably get an assistant superintendent in place by June 9th.
So just, I am supportive of filling 3 positions.
Yep.
My question was, I guess what I'm saying is, the 2 director positions are new positions.
Yeah.
So I am supportive of having those 2 positions.
Okay.
My question really was the timing around and the necessity for filling those permanently at this point.
Right.
Or do you hire the assistant superintendent and give them the opportunity to fill those 2 positions?
I think
we can tell you that we're supportive of
Correct.
Of those 2 positions.
Yep.
It's just the timing,
The
and
timing.
whether or not you allow that person to.
And I think, once that assistant superintendent is approved by the board, hopefully on June 9th, then we post those director positions. And those would probably take place after I'm gone over the summer, and they potentially could be in place by the beginning of August, because we could clearly interview, the district could clearly interview during July and get those done. And so they would come on board, and they would really need to hit the ground running. And we have people in place currently, as I mentioned, that will do some of the preliminary planning for that back-to-school push that we do in August. But those 2 new directors we could get in place on a permanent basis probably by the first part of August as we move forward.
And timing-wise, does that work out okay?
Yeah,
or-
I think so. Yeah. Is it ideal? It may not be ideal, but I do think it's very doable.
Well, having done it for a number of years, I can say that on the impact piece of it, that's something that our team actually begins planning now. So that's something that we actually have in the can before somebody would come in. So that's good on their part, on a plug-and-play standpoint. I'll continue to live 3 miles from here. And my commitment to my own son and every other kid in this district isn't going to waver no matter where I'm at. So if that person needs help, of course I'm going to give it to them, because that's what it's about.
So given that, it looks like Ms. Roney wanted to say
Well,
something.
I just get to be last. Before Dr. Weber had said anything, I felt that it was imperative that Steve would hire this person, because you know the direction we want to go in. And then the other 2 directors, if that person has somebody that's, or we've interviewed some people that we think would fit and we don't want to let them get away, then, I would be all for that as well.
Thank you.
See, you're a duck that has a lot of sway still.
Well, that's good. Thank you for that conversation.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to the superintendent's report.
I have no report this evening. I will save my comments for our meetings in May.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have administrative reports. So, Mr. McIntyre?
Thank you, Dr. Ruska. Really briefly, the May Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference will be Friday, May 20th at 9 a.m. So for those of you who want to watch at the House TV or the Senate TV.
We appreciate you keep inviting us.
Yeah, all the interesting stuff. So we hope to
Are
learn.
we gonna have a viewing party?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
hopefully to learn more information about the upcoming budget, so that's the reason I'll be watching closely. But again, it's Friday, May 20th at 9 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre.
Yeah, that's right.
Dr. Kinzer?
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. Just a couple of brief comments. Our final Mentee Monday of the year is this coming Monday, the 25th. It will be another virtual session, although I have had conversation with our coordinators and we're definitely motivated to return to at least some in-person professional development with our mentees next year. Our topic for our last session is the transition from Tier 1 to Tier 2 for our mentees. We have a tiered system, much like our multi-tiered systems of support for students. In their first year in the district, we provide what we call a Tier 1 mentee experience for our new teachers. It includes our Mentee Monday sessions and one-to-one support. And then in years 2 and 3, we move to Tier 2, which is more of a PLC concept. So we have some of our very successful Tier 2 mentors joining us, and they will really talk about what happens during that Tier 2 mentoring experience, and it is all about instruction. It is direct support for instruction in the classroom, whereas that first year is more focused on the things that a new teacher needs to know to be successful right away. So we'll be doing that on Monday. And then also I would like to just offer some thanks to Rhonda Hoffman. Rhonda has been our elementary mentor coordinator for, 3 or 4 years now, and Rhonda's retiring at the end of the school year. She is currently teaching in our virtual school and done an exceptional job in working with our elementary new teachers. So we'll be posting a new mentor coordinator position very soon to fill Rhonda's position. And then also I'd like to just offer best wishes to Agnes Arbuckle. You've seen Agnes in the boardroom in the past. She is high-level project manager for McCarthy Smith, and tomorrow's her last day with McCarthy Smith. She's accepted a new position with another company, so thank her for years of service to this district and wish her the best in her further pursuits. McCarthy has done a really good job with succession planning, and they have excellent people ready to step up. We're already working with those people. Our bond projects are going very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kinzer. Dr. Weber?
Thanks. Each board member has a magazine in front of them. If you could please open to page 32, I'd greatly appreciate that. The magazine is called Ed Tech. Earlier tonight, we heard from Representative Kelly Breen, and I am grateful to see that she's still here. If it's not page 32, it's in there. What this article highlights is something that that occurred through the synergy and the magic of believing in possibility. So Jason Smith, who is, I believe, the executive director of the NEF, called me, I can't remember, a number of months ago, and he said, hey, look, I just got a contact from Representative Breen. She has an opportunity in the next budget piece. You know, what are you thinking? And so we've already had a proven track record around what we've done with our greenhouses in our partnership there with Bosch, but maybe one of the board members could just hold up the magazine to show the crowd who wants to get on camera there. Can somebody, Justin, can you feature that, please? Just really proud of it.
That's a picture of you. I thought that's what you
No,
wanted.
I don't want me.
Oh.
I want the cover. So this is the part. So Ms. Breen then went ahead and wrote in this notion of not only enhancing our greenhouses, but from a K-6 standpoint, what we do in a STEM piece. I mean, it's pretty amazing to be recognized in a national STEM magazine with districts. I know there's a community member here who's actually worked with another one of those districts in here, and they're one of the highest achieving districts in the country. It's, I think, in California, El Cajon maybe. But the second part of the vision really was going toward the middle school and bringing together and melding everything we've done from STEM with our Curiosity Kits, K4, Microbits in 5th grade, Kamau Robotics in 6th grade, and then working with Jason Smith, Panita Donnie Thurman, who is just, as part of the NEF, has really jumped in here to make sure that we're marching along well, because we have a timeline. I think we have like a year and a half, baby, and that's it. I also want to thank Kathy Hood for being part of that group on the NEF, that group in there, and the representative and the board liaison. Erica Souders, Alex Erskine, 2 teachers we sat together with for like 30 minutes. Those two, I mean, the ideas just kept coming and coming and coming. It's a thing of beauty. George Sipple for finding a way to showcase this work and the amazing aspects of who we are as a community. So imagine behind the middle school, the kids are actually making birdhouses, 3D printing them, putting cameras inside of them with solar panels. Imagine a third grade student at Village Oaks being able to see what's in that birdhouse during the day. Imagine putting cameras up at night so we can find out that yes, we have coyotes, and yes, we have deer here, and the kids seeing that and really digging that. And imagine also from an art standpoint that pieces of art being made by our kids in the middle school, sculpture, whatnot, that's actually displayed in that nature area. Imagine a quartet from orchestra going out there and playing amongst the woods and amongst of all of that. So this shows that you can bring together technology, you can bring together all the other aspects that make our district and our kids incredible, and feature that in a way if you're willing to work together. And one of the things I really appreciate about you, Ms. Breen, is you made a point to talk about in your presentation how that was a bipartisan piece that got together. Our kids are what's important in these situations. Everything, right? So thank you. And thank you to everyone else there that I listed. It's pretty amazing. Number 2, so tomorrow, if you are a cricket fan, and I'm not talking the machine that makes the fancy things, I'm talking like cricket as far as the sport. Tomorrow night at South Lyon High School, one of our incubator students is doing cricket with a cause. Yes, I will be playing a little bit. I don't appreciate the look, Dr. Kinzer. I did strike out in t-ball as a young man. Baseball might not be my thing, but I'm going to try my hardest. If they just tell me to run really far, I can do that. Just around a circle on the pitch, right? And so our student who's doing this is raising money for the Self-Employed Women's Association. It's SUA, and that's an organization in India working for women around social justice, equality, and sexual assault awareness. All the proceeds from tomorrow night will be donated to SEWA. That's 5 to 8 o'clock tomorrow night at Novi High School. So if you're a cricket fan or a fan of comedy, if you want to watch me, come on down. Sarah Leppert came up and advocated strongly for our Novi Mental Health Alliance. Again, Lisa DeMar will be speaking, I believe, on the 3rd of May. The podcast, Ask Lisa. If you're a parent and you're a podcast person, put on your phone right now. It will help you. And then finally, I'd just like to say that please know how deeply grateful I am to so many people in this community right now. When the time is right, I will adequately be able to represent myself, my story, and my gratitude to so many people in a community that I live in, that I raised my son in, and that I love. So it's hard for me to sit in these meetings dispassionately and to not want to acknowledge people who have the courage to speak their truth in whatever meetings they are, whatever side it is. I do appreciate that more than you'll ever know. So thank you's not enough in my mind, but I need you all to know how much I appreciate you looking out for our kids in this community and advocating for them. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. Board communication. Mr. Cook?
Just a couple real quick things. Dr. Weber, at the middle school, you don't have to wait until night to see the coyotes.
They're out there.
Twice in the last 2 weeks, they were approaching the road during drop-off.
Oh, awesome.
Nice, healthy coyote.
Hopefully that's not because they thought they smelled food getting off the buses.
I don't know.
What?
About Agnes, as a fellow Husky, it's going to be sad to see her going, but I know she'll do well wherever she is, wherever she ends up, so send her our appreciation.
Do you have any? Yes, Mrs. Hood?
I do, yes, thank you. First, Dr. Weber, we will have more dialogue, but that little narrative that you just did illustrates the spark that you have brought to so many things in this district, and I love it. And
thank you.
Mrs. Murphy said to me years and years ago about when she was on the board to hire Dr. Matthews, that some other board member from another district said, "Oh, you got a real gem." And I was talking to somebody in Northville the other day, and I said the same thing to them. You are getting a real gem.
Thank you, Kathy.
So, 2 things. I was over at the IB Visual Arts Exhibition in the auditorium library at the high school. Was it yesterday when it opened? or I shouldn't say when it opened, when it was, oh my gosh, what am I trying to say? When it was the
Public viewing.
or whatever. Stop it, that's disrespectful. So, but what I want to say is, it's open from 6:30 to 7 over the next few days during the musical, through the 24th. And we often talk about, oh, the kids of Novi are so talented. But what comes out of this art, and it's all kinds of mediums, is our kids are also thoughtful and creative and imaginative, and when you read their statements associated with each piece of art, they talk about what has inspired them. A friend inspired them, nature inspired them, and then news, history, and then you see how it's come through from their artwork. It's just really, really amazing, and I would suggest anybody, if you have 20 minutes, stop by the high school and see that. And then lastly, but the No-Go Green Gala. The No-Go Green Gala is this weekend, the 22nd to the 24th. There are a couple ways to participate. You can just make a plain old donation. $10 is a wonderful donation. And there are also items to bid on, and local businesses have contributed, have given lots of really great things. Plus, individuals and families around Novi have put together baskets of really cool, interesting things that you might like or your kids might like. So it's online, novieducationalfoundation.org, and there will be a link to the auction site where you can bid on items. So the 22nd to the 24th. Thank you.
Does somebody have the time or date for Cinderella?
Yes, tomorrow night and Saturday at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Any other board communication? Mrs. Roney?
I just want to do my request again to move these reports further up in the meeting. To basically have it for the consent agenda, because this is our advertisement to the people, and at 10 p.m. thinking we don't have a lot of people there, so.
We still do, but Mrs. Holly, do you have that? Thank you. Is that good? You're good? Okay, Mrs.
I
Murphy?
got to go to this side of the table.
Well, I was just gonna say that, Sarah, thank you for being here and letting everybody know about the speaker on May 3rd. It is at 7 o'clock, correct?
And you can register on the public library's website.
Okay, and I was gonna say that, and just in case people at home didn't hear that, because she's not by a microphone, you can register on the library's website for that, or you can go to the middle school.
Yes, you can show.
So you could just show up at the middle school if you wanted to be with other people, or you could do it in the privacy of your home. And I love that you can do the Green Gala in the privacy of your home as well. And I've already previewed the items and marked a few that look pretty awesome. So I'm not gonna tell you which ones, because then you guys might try to outbid me. But yeah, so excited about that. And I'm glad that it runs for 3 days and it's not, where you have to stay up until midnight.
But then you
or-
can watch yourself get outbid.
Well, that's true.
Again and
That's
again.
true. Well, I was just thinking then I don't have to stay up till midnight. I can actually check it the next day. Anyway, but it's a great cause, and, I hope we get a lot of people participating in it too.
Perfect. Any other comments? Okay, so I know that Bobby alluded to the conversation about a lot of misinformation, a lot of miscommunication. So in all transparency, I would like to make a statement as the board president this evening. The Novi Community School District Board of Education, the board or the district, recently became aware of a complaint made by a district student regarding an interaction with a board member. The board's responsibility is to investigate this complaint and take the appropriate action. As the board president, I have been working with the board's legal counsel as the third-party investigator, gathers information, and makes recommendations to resolve this situation. District administrators have taken the appropriate steps needed to ensure the safety of the students at this time. Unfortunately, I am unable to share specifics at this time, as this is attorney-client privileged information. So thank you, and I hope that answers some questions, or at least gives some transparency out there about that. So that being said, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Support.
Recommended by Mrs. Murphy and supported by Mrs. Rowley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.